Okay. Tonight, our guest is Tim Willits, as you can see. And a little different from last week. Tim is a designer of some note with id Software. He'll talk about his history, I'm sure, but started out as a creator of WADs before there was a mods community, so he can talk about that. And kind of worked his way all the way up to amazing creative director and co-ownerness at one of the most successful and influential game companies around, id Software. He's going to talk about his own history. So, his first professional gig, near as I can tell, was Ultimate Doom, where some of his maps ended up in this collection. Worked on Strife, which is kind of an interesting RPG-ish, shootery sort of thing. It was like the kind of hybrid I love.
Yeah, and if you've never heard of that, don't worry about it. I think Warren's probably the only one that's ever heard of that game.
It made an impression on a bunch of us back then. Quake, did level and scenario design. Worked in some capacity that I'm not sure about, so we need to talk about that with Raven Software on Hexen, which used id technology. Bunch of mission pack stuff. Quake 2, lead level designer already, just 2 years into his career. More level design on mission packs, Quake 3 Arena, Team Arena level design. Don't know exactly what input you had on PlayStation 2, but I'd love to talk about that too.
Sure.
And then
I have
one
no
of these
idea what
things
it
is
did
not
with that
like
game.
the others. But you are credited with level design, and I was taken by surprise by that. So.
Yes, I'm taken by surprise too.
Excellent. We won't be talking about that much then.
Was that completely new, or was that?
No, I think that one was the Game Boy Color. It was a port. Probably, I think what we usually do is we put id Software and that's probably where. Did you get this from Moby Games?
Yep.
Yeah, that's probably where.
We
That
need to
isn't
fix
actually
this.
that correct, but everything else is more or less correct.
Okay. Well, you can deal with the less when we
Yes.
start talking. And then Doom 3 lead designer.
And which is a good picture of me too, because I don't take pictures well.
Quake 4 executive producer on yet another new title. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of id's recent efforts in the mobile space and how that happened and what that's all about. And Enemy Territory Quake Wars, which just shipped recently. And then just wanted to sort of look at this is what's happened in Tim's career, starting out up there, and then about 10 years later, 12 years later, ending up down there in the lower right. That shows how far we've come as a medium, and the amazing thing is we probably have as far to go still, but pretty incredible stuff. And then the latest and greatest, which Tim will be showing us some stuff and talking about id's next title. I hope, coming soon, because it looks absolutely incredible. So, that is Tim Willits. All right. Now I'm going to find a way to sit down, and we will chat. I actually have a fancy little remote presentation thing, so we can go look at slides as we're talking. We typically start with a little bit of biography.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you from? And I mean that literally, not metaphorically.
Well, originally, I'm from Minnesota, St. Paul. Went to the University of Minnesota, where I was a computer science and business major, and I also at the time had an ROTC scholarship. So out of high school, my plan was actually go to West Point, and I was a state's prime candidate and all that business. And they said my math wasn't good enough, so the academy wanted to send me to prep school, and then after prep school I'd go on at West Point. Thank God I didn't go there, because my whole life would be different if I went to the military academy. So I went to the University of Minnesota, on a scholarship, which kind of afforded me the benefit of not having to work as much, which actually allowed me to get more into gaming, to get more into map creation, kind of it kind of helped open some doors. And then in my senior year, id Software. This is after 90. I came to id in March of '95. So in '94 was the middle of '94. So was the release of Doom 2, and the company was looking for contractors to work on the Doom 2 Masters Edition, which is it was probably about 20 levels or so, and they wanted like 2 or 3 from a group of map designers. Now, back then there really wasn't this kind of homebrew mod type explosion like we have now. I mean, actually, and I'll talk about that in some of my talk and how the mod making has kind of dipped down a bit. But there really wasn't much of an internet, So there was just a handful of us that were working on these maps, these WADs, and posting them on places like Software Creations, BBS, and CompuServe and things. So the id guys saw that I had a few maps there that were pretty good. They needed some contractors to work on the map pack, so I worked on the map pack for them, and then ultimately got hired full time to work on Strife.
So wait, so there was the Doom Master Edition, but that's not the same as Ultimate Doom, right?
Yes, there is the Doom 2 Masters Edition. It's the it's a white box with all the skulls on the cover. That was actually my first commercial release, and then so I that was released, and then I came and worked at Rogue on Strife, and then I quit Rogue and went to work at id, and then we released the Ultimate Doom, which was the retail version of Doom. So it's Doom 2 Masters Edition, Doom 1, and then Strife came out after that.
So what was your gaming experience outside of Doom? I mean, it sounds like you started with electronic games. You weren't a board gamer or a D&D nerd or any of that kind of stuff like the rest of us, right?
No, I mean, I played them, but unlike guys like Sandy Peterson, icons in that genre who worked at id, that wasn't where I started. In college, in '91, '92, I just fell in love with the power of the PC. I mean, back then, you had your consoles, and everyone had their their Nintendo, but it was really the whole PC gaming movement was just beginning, and the potential. I mean, they were great games that came out in the late '80s and things, but the potential was really starting to kind of blossom, in the early '90s, and I just fell in love with it.
Were you pretty much an FPS guy though? I mean, was it all FPS all the time for you, first person shooters?
Yeah, there was actually there's a story that I love to tell. When I'm recovering from being sick, so my throat's a little now I played Wolfenstein, when it came up, and I wasn't really sure about this whole Doom thing, so I downloaded the shareware version of Doom, and I loaded it up, and basically, if you remember, the first level in Doom 1, you have this little courtyard, it's got these steps that lead up to this armor, then you can look out the window to see some mountains, and there's a door at the end of the hallway. So I downloaded the shareware version, and I was walking around this room, and I was like, this is really cool. And I didn't realize that door, that you could open that door. And I thought that the whole shareware episode, the whole demo of Doom was just this room, and I thought, this is freaking amazing. There's mountains out there, and there's steps, and there's armor and stuff, and thought that was the whole game. And there's this wall that I couldn't figure out how to, I knew it looked different. And as soon as I hit spacebar right in front of the door, and the door opened, that was the moment that my whole life changed. I was like, I knew that this was what I wanted to do, and I was like, a laser beam of focus of what I wanted to do, and it really was. I mean, it was the life-changing event to open that door and to see that world that laid out in front of me in the Doom universe on Phobos.
So, what was it like being a level builder back then? I mean, there were no tools to speak of. And I mean, tell these young whippersnappers what it was like before you had these beautiful drop-down menus and stuff.
Oh yes, yes. It was. I'm like the original fanboy. You know, I mean, I
Never would have known.
Yes, yeah, I love Doom. It was much more difficult. You know, one of the things that was really great about id Software and John Carmack, and I'll talk more about John and his philosophy, is that the company, and John loves to share things. Loves to give away code, loves to give people access to what he's done. He likes to open up the hood and show you the engine. And because of that, there were people that were able to take the original Doom map source code and kind of reverse engineer these editors, because the game was developed on NextStep, and I'm not sure if anyone knows what NextStep is, but if you have OS X, if you have a Mac now, then that is a NextStep is like the father of OS X, and that's what we developed Doom on. So so people made PC versions of these map editors, and it was crude. I mean, even when I got to id and worked on NextStep, which was great, it was still very crude. Lots of when you wanted to line up textures and you knew a texture was 128 long and you had 64, you had to shift to 64 and 32. You had to do all the math in your head. You had to visualize things and imagine what they would look like, because there was no real-time render preview. There were no dragging entities around. It was all very, 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 very different, very, very new.
So, what was it like working on Strife? Not a role player particularly, shooter guy, and here you are figuring out how to get shopkeepers to sell stuff and conversations and all this wacky stuff that I loved. And
well, I mean,
work?
luckily I was so young and new, and just excited to be there. I was just I had a very simple job. Make this map. And
the box went away. There we go.
Your slides are much more impressive than my slides. Really, we had a really great team. At the time, it was Rogue Entertainment was only about 6 guys, led by a guy named Jim Molinetz, who's now over at Sony, I believe.
Yeah.
And he was pretty sharp. And he loved those games as well. So it wasn't really anything that I had to really worry about. I focused more on the combat. Working on the multiplayer and stuff. So it wasn't. I liked those games, and when I played D&D, with my brother and my friends, but it wasn't stuff that I really focused much effort on. I was too new.
So you mentioned multiplayer. Doom was sort of a little lever, a multiplayer little lever, right? Doom 2 was something more, and then Quake just sort of broke it all open. Can you talk through the multiplayer?
Yes.
How that worked in each of those games and how it changed and why it changed?
Yeah. This is making my talk much easier if I do it now. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to take pieces of my talk and
we can skip it and you can give your talk.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
It was.
We'll come back to that.
Yes.
Okay. But Quake was interesting because it was and if this is in your talk, we can skip this too.
No, it's okay.
But it was the first game that shipped with specific multiplayer
levels.
maps,
Yes,
right?
That's very good, because I was going to mention that, because I don't think
Okay,
people
we'll
know
move
that. No. We can talk about that. Yes, it was the
So
first.
how did that happen? Was that a big revelation?
No.
Did you come up with that? Was it?
Yes, it's very. It's that's funny that you asked that question. So before. See, the team at id had started working on Quake 1 while I was working on Strife. And I think actually Strife came out after Quake 1 did.
Did it really?
It might have, because it took them forever to get it to, I can't remember, it might have, or came out right before. So, the team at the time was working on Quake. And there were only a handful of level designers. There was John Romero, Sandy Peterson, American McGee. And then John was working on the technology, and they had no idea what they were doing. It was just all over the place. I mean, they had medieval stuff. They had this whole ancient elders power stuff. They had like techie stuff. It was just across the board, and the famous John Romero design of it was, let's just make some cool shit. Can I swear? Sorry.
I think they've heard it before.
Okay. Well, I did this talk at this high school, and I said, I swore, and the teacher was like, "Oh, excuse me, don't swear." They were really, I mean, they had no vision for that game, and it was completely a mess. So when I got there, John Carmack was trying to kind of put these pieces together. We had these techie areas, we had this fantasy areas and stuff. So, so he really wanted to build kind of like this. Basically the story goes that you're in this present time and you slip gate into the past and stuff. So basically, what I'm getting at is we had all these small fragments of levels that really did not fit with the game once we tried to put it in some logical order, and so we were all in the big room, at the time, because the office was, under remodeling. So we're all in the big room, and I said to John, I said, we have all these maps, that are just fragments, small little chunks of map. I said, we should just make these deathmatch maps. And I remember John Romero told me that was a silly idea. And he's like, well, if you make a great single player map, we make great for multiplayer, you can kill two birds with one stone. That's really that's what being a map designer is. You can do that. And I was like, yeah, but we got these really cool maps that we can make. Yeah, they told me it was a really bad idea. But
how did you sell it? How did you convince them?
We just, I made a couple, and I took their map. I took a couple of Americans' maps, one of John's maps, even some of the Sandy stuff, and I just put them together, and we started playing on them, and then John finished his, and American finished his, and we had, I think, like 6. But yes, it was the very first. I'm shocked that you call. You're a smart guy. It was the first game that had multiplayer dedicated. I thought maybe Rise of the Triad did, but I don't think it actually did.
I don't think they did.
I can't. Yeah, you have to ask Tom.
Yeah, I'm too old to remember that stuff. So I actually was going to get to this later, but since you we're talking about multiplayer maps, is there a difference? I mean, as a designer, when you sit down to do a single player map and a multiplayer map, are they different? Do you approach them differently?
Oh, yes.
How
yes.
are they different?
Yeah, there's without getting into it too much.
No, get into it too much. That's the whole point.
Okay, well, rearrange myself in the chair. In multiplayer maps, there's these kind of themes, and if you work to one of these themes, your map will be successful. There's the arena theme, which is basically you have this central area that everything feeds into, and then you have a location theme, made famous by, the Quake Deathmatch Level 3, I think, where you have, you have like the generator room, and you have like the water room, and so you have these identifiable locations. And then you have like a themed, deathmatch map, like in Quake 3, like our space maps with the bounce pads and the acceleration pads and stuff. Those really 3 themes, 3 basic concepts of a multiplayer map makes a multiplayer map. Like, there's actually a formula, regardless of what game you're making and what weapons you have. If you make a map in a certain way, it will always be fun, and that is like the Edge in Quake 2, which originally was inspired from a map called Ledges from Doom, is the perfect kind of basic framework for a multiplayer map, where you have this nice centralized area, round or square, doesn't matter. You have, a few multi-levels where you have some access points and you have some exits and things, and then you keep players all focused on this middle area. And then you need to put a few sound cues, like a ladder or bounce pad to kind of trigger the players for where other players are. But if you make a map just like that, it will always be fun. And it's a bold thing to say, but I have never seen a map made correctly in any game that was like that wasn't fun. I mean, it really is the perfect, and I've been doing this a long time, it's the perfect construction of a multiplayer map. You know, with it saying that, you know, the location-based maps are always fun, you know, to play, because you're like, oh, I'm in the generator room, or oh, I'm in the pump room, you know, and you can set up kind of fun, you know, gameplay mechanisms with that. And then, of course, theme maps. Theme maps are, you know, are always a gamble. You know, like a big bounce pad, you're always bouncing around, or like, you know, lots of teleporters, or, you know, no grav or water or something. So, you know, those can be fun. Most people don't like them. Most people end up playing the, you know, the arena style. But it's true. If you make a map like that, I guarantee you,
that's in a deathmatch.
In a deathmatch
environment, right?
Multiplayer deathmatch environment. Yes.
Okay, so is it? Are there similar rules for capture the flag or escort missions, or?
Well, the one rule for capture the flag, and it's very important that you listen to this if you're ever going to make a capture the flag map, because we've tried it and it hasn't worked. You need to make the bases identical. It's okay it's okay if you mirror them. You know, that's fine. Don't get too tricky, because that confuses people. But if you make them just the slightest bit different, you might as well delete it, because no matter how tricky you think you are, and no matter how you think this is, oh, it's balanced because it's unfair here, and that's too unfair, so it's going to be balanced. No, make it identical. Trust me, we've tried it so many times, and we've failed every time. Has to be identical.
Interesting. How important is verticality? I mean, one of the things, one of the sort of rules, I call them the rules of role playing on Deus Ex, and one of them was, if you can draw your map on graph paper, it's not worth putting in the game, because you have to think in terms of verticality in 3D space. How important is that to single player maps at id, or in your mind, and to multiplayer maps?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem with you know, vertical maps is new players. You know, like, and not to go off on a tangent here, but you know, it's something that we always need to balance. It's something that we always think about. Is you know, it's a very fine line between making the game accessible and making it fun for people to jump in, people that don't have a lot of FPS experience, and then making it, you know, enjoyable for, you know, the hardcore people. And yes, I know that you can say, well, if you were a good game designer, you could figure out ways to do that, you know. But it's really hard, and they're like, wow, does it? But so, you know, with people who are starting out, you know, new players, the verticality makes it difficult, you know, and because it's a whole nother, you know, there's two more areas that they have to concentrate with. I mean, people have a hard time just going this way, you know, and then you add all this other stuff, and then it gets difficult, and then you have the controller, you know, thank God.
It's interesting you did this. You're a PC guy, or at least have until recently.
Well, yeah,
I mean, you did this.
But I mean, you know, controllers are big issues, and thank God Halo sold 11 billion copies, you know, and made first-person shooters legitimate on consoles. So you know, so working with controllers it makes it much more difficult. So for you know, it is a balance. It's sometimes more fun if it's more vertical, you know. Especially, I mean, in multiplayer, it's almost a necessity, you know. But you know, but it's much more challenging. So there is really a trade-off, you know. Like in the beginning of Doom 3, our maps were more flat, you know, and as we moved up, we made them more vertical. It really depends on all the things that your players have to focus on, and you just need to balance that. So that's not a very. I think I talked around your question.
Well, so on Doom 3, let me. Okay, that's a lesson I maybe need to internalize here. Hold on. So on Doom 3, you started out
pretty
making
flat.
the maps pretty flat, and then you used that as another tool to challenge players as they got deeper into the game, instead of just making enemies tougher or giving them bigger weapons or whatever. Making the puzzles harder.
Yeah, there are
cool.
no monsters that come after you.
I'm an idiot.
You know, they always come straight at you. In Doom 3 in those first couple levels. There
Talk amongst yourselves here while I write a note for my next game.
I may get an email from someone, and, you know, there was this imp that came up from, you know, but pretty much that was something that we consciously did. You know, keep everybody right in front of you. So you're like, okay, that's the way the imp works. Okay, that's where that guy works. and then you move this way.
So, as a designer, as a level designer, okay, I know you weren't there on Wolfenstein, but
No.
Wolfenstein was fake 3D. It wasn't a real 3D map.
No.
And Doom
Was 2.5D.
yeah, and then Quake was the first true 3D game.
Yes.
Do you have to change the way you think about level design when you go from why don't you explain what 2.5D is, by the way, because I'm not sure everybody knows, but from 2.5D to 3D, is there a shift you have to make, or is it pretty much we already know that?
Yeah, well, no, actually, there was a lot of trickery in Doom. Working on Doom maps, mostly because you couldn't really go under anything.
Mm-hmm.
There were no true, there's no looking up and down, no jumping.
Yeah, it's just you adjust the camera straight up
yeah.
and down to simulate 3Dness.
So there's no bridges. Like you can never have this. But the maps were constructed in such a way where it gave the illusion that you were going through tunnels and you were above. So, and there was, but it was actually, I don't know what was easier. It might. That's really a tough question. When we were working on Quake, it was again completely new, and there were no other game. I mean, there were no other games out there that was had deathmatch to that level that we had, or the gameplay to that level. But it was more natural. It was more okay. This makes sense. There's not trickery involved. It's we as humans experience the world in 3D. So when you make it work on the game, it just makes things much more sense. So I don't really think it was more difficult, but it did definitely allow us more freedom, and it allowed us to make more mistakes, do wrong things.
I got a bunch of process questions we'll get to later. I should probably ask now, but for now, let's see if we can get the picture up. There we go.
Excellent.
So this was a project done by Raven Software using. It was Quake tech at this point, right?
Yeah. Well, Hexen
was Doom too?
It was okay. It was Heretic, Hexen, and then Heretic. No, was it? No, this is Doom. It was Heretic 2. Uses the Quake technology, I believe, and that's the one that I went up to Raven. Hexen. My involvement in Hexen is I shared an office with John Romero at the time, and he was more or less like their producer, not the producer, but like the ID's kind of creative liaison.
Mm-hmm.
So between like him and Sean and myself, just helping him basically test and give feedback was really my only involvement to Hexen. So and to tell you the truth, John didn't have much involvement with this ice shard thing. That was his brilliant idea. The Raven guys, I don't want to speak to the Raven guys.
So, but Heretic 2, you were more actively
Heretic 2
involved?
was the Doom one, I believe.
Okay.
Where they, okay, Raven Software in Madison, Wisconsin. It's been around a long time. We've ID's had a really great relationship with them. Actually, ID, in the very beginning, they were starting in Shreveport, and they moved to Madison, where they actually met, Brian and Steve. And then
Brian and Steve Raffle are the guys
sorry.
who run or created and run.
And that was
Software.
like 92, was it? Somewhere like that?
Yeah.
Because you worked on the 91.
I worked. It was actually from 91 to 93. This is a little known fact. I actually produced a game with Raven called Shadowcaster. It's the only thing my name does not appear on that I've worked on. It wasn't a question of quality. It was that there were things I wanted to do, and EA wouldn't actually give us the time to do them. So I said, don't put my name on it. But I think I'm in a graveyard. I think they put my name on a gravestone. I don't know if that was an editorial comment,
but the Raven guys are great guys. Brian Raffle is great.
Fantastic artists.
Oh
Those
yeah,
guys are amazing.
The art
artists.
town up there is ridiculous. We've had Raven is probably like our best friend when it comes to companies. We've had such a good relationship with them for so long. They have some of the guys there have been there a long time. So, they've always had our technology first, and lots of times they work on games for us, so, their success, our success is due to their success. So, Heretic, I helped more with, showing them how to use the technology, getting them up on the editor, explaining what to do, what not to do with the because they wanted to, Quake was a pretty simple world, and they wanted to bring more of an RPG element, more of a fantasy element, as they love to do. So they had they made stoves and dishes and tables out of brushes and just like, oh my lord, you did that out of brushes, and so they had a lot to overcome with the technology. So I tried to help them as much as I could with that, So Hexen just really more Heretic 2, and I told Raven not to make the pointed ears so pointed.
That's a valuable contribution.
Yes.
So who handled? Did you just let those guys run? Or was someone at id making the deals, tracking schedules? Did you deal with any of that stuff, or not you personally?
No, not me personally, because again, I was so junior back then. No, really, id let Raven kind of do what they wanted to do. John Romero was kind of the like I said, the kind of creative liaison, but they were a disciplined group of guys. They had already shipped titles before they worked with id. They're very smart. They they knew what basically what they were doing, and it was only recently, really in the last, Raven is the only company that we kind of were a hands-off approach to. All our other developers that we work with were much more connected with them, and much more kind of co-designing, but they're so talented, they don't really need much help.
Okay. And so then we have this one. I don't know if there's much to talk about with mission packs. But I was curious about this because again, I admit I'm depending pretty heavily on Moby Games for specific titles because I couldn't track down all of the manuals to check the credits. But in this game, you were credited with design as opposed to level design or scenario design.
We had it was Scourge of Armagon, and was it Dissolution of Eternity? What was the other one? No, that was the Quake. Yeah, Scourge of Armagon, and the other one's Dissolution of Eternity. This is Ritual that did this one, and the other one was Rogue. And basically it was my job to when they would work on levels, I was the first line of review. So I met with the Ritual folks, and the Rogue folks. The Rogue folks were in the same building, so it was much easier. And we would just, because again, it was very mission based, and Mission 3 had not much to do with Mission 2, and Mission 4 really had nothing to do. So they were very discrete. If this map was fun, it was cool. And you put a bunch of fun maps together, you get a fun game. Very simple. It's got much more complex.
Yeah, I was about to say, in 1997, that might have worked.
The doesn't work now.
No.
And so really, this was some of our first kind of attempts into the mission pack business, which has since kind of died. From like 96 to 2001 or so, you could do a mission pack. And basically, publishers, well, this is what they told us, that you got about 25%. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, Origin did this in the early 90s.
Yes. You got 25%, penetration rate at people that, if 100 people bought the game, you got 25 people to buy a mission pack. And most times it worked out that way. The Blue Shift, the Halo one, no, not the Halo one, the Half-Life one, got like some ridiculous, like 55 or 60%. It was great. It was unheard of. But the whole mission pack concept is dead. I doubt you will see mission pack for any game, because now people want to do downloadable content. They want to do microtransactions. Like the success that Oblivion had, really kind of shows that spending months working on mission pack is just really not the way to go anymore. You could take and as a company spend 6 months working on 6 different downloads or microtransactions and make more money. So mission packs are basically dead.
Seemed like a good way to start a company, though. Rogue and Ritual, and
Nerve.
Yeah, a bunch of other places started out doing them.
Yeah,
It's a good way to test folks out.
What's his face? Your buddy Drew.
Drew Markham.
Yes, yeah, worked on Quake 2 Mission Pack.
Yeah. The other interesting thing was, again, this is according to Moby Games, so this may not be accurate, but on this game you were listed as designer with American McGee and Sandy Peterson.
On which one?
On this one, I think.
Oh,
we need to go in and correct Moby Games.
I know.
Somebody needs to take that on as a project.
Oh, I know. You know what's worse? Wikipedia.
That's because Oh no, I was going to say something I probably shouldn't say. The camera's wrong.
It's like the id software page is not necessarily correct, and it's impossible to change because there's Wikipedia monsters out there.
But when I saw this,
no, actually, I've Sandy and American. I don't think they did anything on that. I think they were at id,
right?
But I have no memory of what they did on that.
So, but let's talk about Sandy Peterson for just a second. You brought him up a minute ago.
Yeah, Sandy's great. I like Sandy.
I gotta tell you,
you should get him down here.
Sandy Peterson was basically kind of godlike in the tabletop role-playing world. I mean, he worked at Chaosium. He was the designer of Call of Cthulhu, still one of the great RPGs, tabletop RPGs of all time. And I remember when I heard he had gone to id, I was thinking, what the heck? I mean, did he seem like a fish out of water? I mean, all you guys with computer science background, and, all these amazing tech guys, and here's Sandy Peterson.
Sandy's great. He really is.
He's totally great.
If you guys got him down, he'd be way more fun to listen to than me. Trust me.
Oh, brother.
Yes, he is an encyclopedia of incredible knowledge of history and wars and past politics and everything, weapons of ancient. He's great, but and I think, and again, I don't want to speak for John Carmack, and I'll try not to speak for John Carmack tonight. But John wanted to bring, John was always into, Dungeons and Dragons and role playing, and he wanted to bring some of those elements, into the company, and Sandy was was an obvious choice, for
Paul Jaquez, same thing.
Paul Jaquez, yeah. Actually, Paul, he was, because Sandy went to ensemble, and having that classic paper and pencil type mentality is a good balance for crazy kids who want to get the rocket to fire faster because they can kill people quicker. That's virtual people. So that is a good balance to have in a company, but you need to give them the right environment to grow, and to play to their strengths, So I'm a big fan of the paper pencil, and board games. Someone brought a board game in, and it is because it uses your mind. Now I think players have gotten kind of mentally lazy, is probably a harsh word, but they want to sit there and they want to look at these beautiful things, and they want all the experience, and I think they're not using their brains as much as you did when you played Dungeons and Dragons, and you had to tell a story, and you had to make people believe what you believe by explaining things. And I think as game designers, and even game players, it's unfortunate that people don't play more paper pencil games.
Well, do you think those guys had the kind of impact on id that John wanted them to have? Was there room for people to be creating amazing stories? And
well, yeah, I mean,
were they in there just putting brushes down?
Yeah, I mean, it was
seems like an odd fit.
It was an odd fit because John, the original founders of id, and I have a funny picture. You think the picture you had of me was funny? I have a better one. They were kind of stuck between arcade. They loved, the arcade games. They loved, the old Apple IIe games and things. And then they also loved, the Dungeons and Dragons, role player and stuff. And they wanted to do a lot of this, but I think the arcadey, instant gratification, fast and fun, and blow 'em uppy type stuff really kind of won over. I mean, a lot of the early games like Wolfenstein, had a lot of kind of arcade feel to them, like one-ups,
Yeah.
you know, and levels. John believed that you can get in, like he wanted to make a game where you could get in, you had no manual, you could play just like that, you could totally figure it out, you could understand the world, and you could go. And it was, level based. This level is less difficult than the next level and the next level, and there was a discrete, finite set of challenges that you could overcome and succeed. And that is John Carmack game design.
Not a bad model. So I'm going to sort of skip ahead here. Now,
Quake 2.
What
I
the-
love Quake 2
Okay,
too.
well,
Not as much
so-
as Doom.
What is a lead level designer, and why there's no design credit on this one? All of a sudden, there's no design credit
Yes.
anymore. So how did Quake 2 happen? What did it add to the id thing?
Yes,
the
Quake 2
shooter
was
game.
Quake 2 at that time was the most, until Doom 3 came around. Quake 2 was our biggest selling title. It outsold everything else. Contrary to what what people think. Doom 2 was our kind of okay. When you're developing a technology and you're making a game, it's really hard. With Quake, that's what we were doing. That's why the design was such a mess. That's why we had to kind of put it all together, and we got lucky that it was so influential as it was. Quake 2, the technology was mostly done, and yes, John added color lighting and some radiosity to the light pass, but it really it allowed us to be more creative, I guess, and allowed us to actually have a story. Guns of Navarro was the story, where you were sent to Strogos to take out the big gun, and you were sent in these individual attack ships because the big motherships would get targeted by this big gun. You were to knock out the big gun, and then you were to open up space for our big command ships to come in, which was actually the story of Quake 4. So Quake 2. Really allowed us to tell more of a story. It had, had locations that made sense. It had, we didn't have any character development. We're not Warren, and we are the anti-Warren. But allowed us to have more of a story, and
That's probably why you guys drive Ferraris, by the way, and I don't.
nobody has a Ferrari. Id.
Oh yeah.
No,
Okay.
John.
Whatever.
I'm telling you, John
Whatever.
Carmack does not own a Ferrari. There is no Ferrari drivers at
That's
id.
because he owns rockets. Anyway, getting back to Quake 2. Sorry.
But so basically we had, Sandy was gone. He went to Ensemble. Romero was gone. He was at Iron Storm. American was,
A big target painted right here.
So it was, it was basically me, American, and he was mostly working on a lot of sound and stuff, and then we had, Sandy was there for most of the project, but really, I did most of the levels. It was Quake 2 was extremely long hours. I mean, I wasn't married, I was young, and it was very, very difficult. I mean, it was all-nighters many times, working 7 days a week. It was, I put a lot of heart and soul in that game, and we all did. We had 13 people that made that game, and they're really, we only had 3 level designers, 3 or 4, because Brandon came in, and American left, and Sandy left and stuff. So we had very few level designers, 13 people, and it was it outsold everything that we had done before. I mean, it really was one of our best achievements.
So, okay, so walk me through. Just let's take a step back for half a second. And 13 people sounds like nothing. Is that? I mean,
Yes, it was very.
but was that about the size it stayed from Doom 2? Was it? That,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that about the size?
The company's very small. It started with 4 guys. And they brought in just a handful of people. John believes that it's important to keep your company small. Hire the best people. Be agile enough to change directions. And I'll talk about this a bit when it comes to technology. He really wanted to keep keep the management system flat, you know, so everybody had input in the design. So for Quake 2, we had two artists, like Kevin Cloud and Adrian Carmack, did all the art. You know, Paul Steed did all the animations and he built the models. You know, we had John Carmack, John Cash. John Cash went on to be the lead programmer in WoW. And then Brian Hook, I think. Yeah, Brian Hook was there. And then we had 3 level designers. And then we had Todd and Donna, and that's about it.
Wow.
It was ridiculously small, and it was ridiculously difficult. But it's a great game. I mean, it's I love Doom, and then I love Doom 3 because I worked that was I did all that, but Quake 2 is right up there with some of my favorite games.
So moving on here, let's see.
This Team Arena is the absolutely best game ever made for 13 people.
13.
That's us.
Not 12, not 14.
No, just
the,
for
the 13 of you.
Yes. We probably had maybe 20 people by this time, but this game is genius in a box that only 20 people liked. Us.
Okay. And
it was
what was it?
But it was great.
Usually when you make games for yourselves,
they don't
kind of
really sell
works.
very
No,
well,
it kind of works out. I actually think that's one of the best ways to do it. So why do you think it didn't quite work this time?
I mean, we do like to make games for ourselves, and we made this one first. We really did. But the problem is, on the one hand, we believe in modding and allowing people to modify the games, and we've built this community, and we've given these tools away, and people have done these great things, and there's these great, total conversions, and this was at the height of some of the greatest mods that, like Team Fortress was a mod, originally. This came out at the height of all the great mods, and people are like, I don't want to pay $20 for this. I can play Team Fortress for free, or I can play, Counter-Strike started out as a mod. I can play these for free, So why am I going to pay you $20 when I can play this thing for free? So that was one of the reasons why it did not sell that well.
Well, another reason I found myself getting confused about it at this point. Okay, what's the difference between that? And
Quake 2?
And then, it just...
Because Quake 2 is completely different.
Well, okay. How about explaining why and how?
Oh, that is a good question. Yes, Quake 2 should have been called something else. If we would have just called it... Actually, Paul Steed came up with WAR, W-O-R. I always liked the name. We should have called it that. Quake 2 should have been called something else. But coming up with names is really hard. And we ran out of time.
Deus Ex.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, whatever.
And we literally, it's sad to say, but it's just what happens. We couldn't come up with the name that we could all agree on in the amount of time that it takes to get it approved and trademarked and searched, and it takes for it to get a name like Rage. We just recently, got Rage, and someone else had it, and we had to file for cancellation, and then they had approvals. But it literally has taken us over a year, and so it takes so long to get a name. So we ran out of time, and we called it Quake 2. That was a big mistake, in my opinion.
So can you describe how the gameplay differed between or among Quake
Quakes?
2, Quake 3 Arena, and Quake 3 Team Arena?
Oh yeah, then there's Quake 4. We like to toss it up.
Okay.
So
but these came out bang, bang, one on top of the other.
Every even Quake
they kept on coming.
has a story about the Strogg and the Earth, and every odd Quake makes no sense.
Wait.
That's a good way to describe it. Quake
Tell
1,
me this wasn't
no
by
sense.
design, okay?
Quake 3,
tell
no
me,
sense.
Tell me not by design. Did you
like
plan it?
Highlander, or like the Star Wars, the Star Trek movies. Every other one is
fair enough.
But no, okay, so we worked on Quake, and it was a mess, and we said, okay, we need to not make this be a mess when we work on Quake 2, So we actually came up with this game design, new concept. We had a good story, Guns of Navarro, and we had very straightforward. We had a setting, it was perfect. Worked out great. Sold a lot. Worked out great. So we started in Quake 3. And Quake 3 was, we were going to stick with the Strogg and we're going to stick to that universe. So we're like, yeah, this is going to work out great. John's going to make a small iteration to the technology, and then we were going to do Quake 2 Part 2. Simple plan. And we started on that plan, and those things were going well. And John, the genius that he is, said, I got this idea.
Uh-oh.
And that goes back to, we need to be small. We need to be agile and flexible enough to change directions when things like, I have this great idea. Because if we were 150 people, I mean, if you're 150 people and you're going down the road and you need to turn, you can't do it. But when you're 20, when you're 30, you turn. So, John was like, Quake 3 also had this technology shift, when it went to hardware only, and people were like, well, that'll never work. You'll never sell a game that requires a video card. We were told that many times. And
oh yeah.
And because remember, Quake 2 actually had had two render passes, software and hardware. So Quake 3. Oh, and this is funny. This is a good story that not many people know. Activision signed Quake 3, and they thought Quake 3 was going to be like Quake 2, and so they gave us all the money, and we started working on Quake 2, and then we decided to do Quake 3. So we called them up, and we're like, you need to come down, to Texas, yes. So they showed up and they're like, okay, remember that Quake 2 game? Quake 3 was something like that. Well, it's going to be multiplayer only, hardware only, and they were like, oh. And they trusted us, and because they could have made it very difficult for us because we already signed a contract with them, and it was a very intense dinner, but we convinced them that it was going to work. So basically, what John thought, is in '98 is when we started this. That's when the 3FX cards and the I'm trying to think of all the old ones that don't exist anymore. The SGI.
No. Was it
not
the S3?
S3. That was it. Yes. And this is early ATIs and stuff.
God.
So they were kind of really catching on. Building momentum. The prices were dropping. And John, is really. I mean, he is arguably the best graphics programmer in the world. I know that's a lofty thing to say, and I know the world's a big place, but someone's got to be the best graphics programmer in the world, and it might as well be John. So, so when you have that resource, the company needs to use it. John loves technology, loves to live on that razor's edge of technology, push it, and the video card, companies love him because he sells the video cards for them, and the CPU people love him because he pushes the technology. So, he felt that this was the right time, to do a hardware-only game, and we got criticized hard for it, and people were like, this is going to fail. And then on top of that, to make it multiplayer only, basically. We had bots and you could play single player and stuff, but really it was a multiplayer only game. And it was Quake 3 Arena, and it was, it sold okay. But it wasn't as, it kind of went back to that Quake feel, much more fast and intense. Mm-hmm. There are people that, even to this day, either, like Quake 3 feel, or the Quake 2 feel and stuff, but, for us internally, Quake 3, Quake 3 Arena, is probably, and this is another lofty thing to say, Quake 3 Arena probably is still the single best one-on-one Twitch precision deathmatch game out there. A lot of good games, I love Unreal and Painkiller and all the Valve stuff is great. All those games are great. I'm not saying anything bad about those games. I love all those games. But if you want pure, precise, precision, skill-based deathmatch, Quake 3 is the place to go.
I actually, this is still played at Junction Point.
Yes.
Even now. Quake 3 is one of the games that gets played all the time at the studio.
Yeah, it's still, if you go to GameSpy, the GameSpy rankings, it's still in the top 10.
Yeah.
And it came out so long ago. That's why, John talked a little bit about this at QuakeCon, hold on. John, mentioned this, but we are, building a second team at id, and the core team that is going to move on to make the next Quake title is actually working on a game. It's codenamed Quake Zero, but it's not going to be Quake Zero. But basically, it is Quake 3 run in a web browser. So,
awesome.
One of the big problems that we have with id games is that 6 months after they're released, and you go to the store and you buy it, you're not going to be able to play it. Because there's patches, and then there's pro mods, and then there's other mods, and then there's server mods, and then it's ridiculous. You can't figure it out. I can't figure it out. I tried to play Quake 3 online. I couldn't figure it out. I finally made some people at work play with me.
They're probably playing it at the office right now. If you want to go back there instead of getting dinner tonight.
Yeah. Because the thing is it's so impossible to play online, and we feel that there's like it's not a large group, but there's a group of people in the world that still play all the time. So what we want to do, and we don't want to break it for them. We just want to take and bring all the updates and all the patches and all the mods and stuff, and bring them all together in one quick installable web app. So basically, you will launch Internet Explorer. You type Quake Zero or whatever we're going to call it, and then you push the play button. And John says, "I want you to be in the game in 5 seconds." So basically, it downloads everything you need. You can set your configuration up on the web browser, and boom, and we're gonna give it away for free. So we're also gonna use some ads to drive revenue, and ads aren't bad, people. And
yes, they are.
No, they're not. See, I'm the anti-Warren. Because you know how expensive it is to make a game and how much work it is. So you go to Google, don't you? They have ads. You watch TV, don't you? So so we're gonna try. See if this works. We're gonna try to run Quake 3 in a web, give it away for free, and generate support through ads. But the reason this is gonna work is that the stuff that we learn from doing this small project will feed directly into the retail full, not ad driven or type of the next Quake game.
Let me know when you're ready for playtesters. I got them for you.
Actually, we will be ready for playtesters probably in about 2 weeks. But it's just for friends and family. Sorry, but in like a month or two, we want to start out small, and then we want to see what we can add to it.
All right. Well, I'll be bugging you in a month or two then. So
new free Quake 3. At QuakeCon we announced that we were going to give Quake 3 away for free. And then at QuakeCon, we announced the Steam id pack. Steam's great. I love Steam too, because all my id games are on Steam, and I can go anywhere and play all my id games. It's great. So we announced the Steam pack right after we announced we were giving Quake 3 away for free, and people went and bought Quake 3. It was great, and a lot of people did. It was like, this is awesome. So.
Wow. Okay, so what's the difference?
Between well, that's a submission pack.
Okay.
For Quake 3.
Well, that's an easy answer.
Yeah.
All right. So then we get to, this is wrong on so many levels.
Because it's from EA.
Because it's EA, it's Bullfrog,
and it's
PS2. What's wrong with this picture? What's right with this picture?
It wasn't that bad. Did you play it?
No, I have to admit, I never played it.
It actually turned out pretty well. They actually used their own engine.
Okay, so how did this happen? How did this happen?
Did
EA come to you and say, we want Bullfrog to do your game on the PS2?
Yeah.
And Activision let you guys get away with it, and
yeah, we well, I'm not sure how happy Activision was with Team Arena sales, since it was made for 20 people, us, and we got it for free. I don't think they were particularly happy, and we have a good relationship. We really try to have a good relationship with all the big publishers. We're very small. We're a private, company. we stay independent. You can't burn bridges down when you're as small as we are. So we have a good relationship with EA. We've always had it. You know, Valve, great relationship. Raven, great relationship. You know, so, you know, for us, you know, Activision's like, you know, it's really not in our game plan. You know, we don't have a studio to work on it. You know, and we're like, well, can EA do it? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. You know, and it wasn't very difficult to do, and they use their own engine, and it actually turned out pretty cool. It wasn't that bad, seriously.
Okay.
It was, yeah. It's not. I wish I had some funny story before I do.
All right. Well, we won't talk about that because you didn't work on it.
No, no. And you know what? I don't even like Commander Keen.
Isn't
I don't love. Where's the camera? I don't even like Commander Keen.
Isn't John or somebody talking about re-releasing all those old games or something now? I mean, all the
no, you get them on Steam.
Oh, okay. Just okay.
In Steam pack. It's great.
All right.
You should buy it.
All of the old.
It's like $70. You get everything. You can play Commander Keen on Steam.
Holy cow!
Yes.
All right.
Doom 3, much better game to talk about.
Doom 3. Okay, so
you forgot the Doom slide, the Doom movie slide with Carl Urban and The Rock.
Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't.
Yeah, there's a character named Dr. Willits.
Oh God. Okay. Well, we'll talk about the movie at some point here. We can talk about the movie now.
No, we'll talk about the game first.
Okay, so radically different, and let me just preface our discussion here by saying that when this came out, it had dynamic lighting, you know, projected shadows, the whole like real-time shadowing and lighting, all you know, all that. And at Ion Storm, I foolishly made the team do the same thing. We actually wrote our own. We added that to Unreal, and boy did it kill us. So it was thrilling to me that John Carmack and id had all the same problems we did.
Oh yeah.
It was astonishing. We were so far ahead of the hardware and what it was capable of doing. So tell me, how did this game happen? How did the tech happen? I guess let's start with that.
Well, you know, John had always. I mean, you know, John is always looking ahead. You know, one of the great things about John is he really does have the unique ability to see out 2-3 years into the future. You know, and you know, he's on the advisor boards for, you know, NVIDIA. He helps out in Intel. You know, ATI. You know, he's not prejudiced when it comes to hardware. So he helps these companies really kind of direct, you know, where they're heading. I mean, if it wasn't for John, there probably would not be OpenGL in the world. You know, Microsoft. Remember, Microsoft wanted it gone and wanted it eradicated. You know, and really, John kept OpenGL alive. Now, you know, like 3D Max and all those high-end programs, you know, take advantage of those things. But you know, so John has always been on the forefront of technology. So he was developing the Doom 3 stuff. You know, really while we were working on Team Arena game, was when he started to do, you know, the bump mapping, you know, the height map, specular. You know, now remember, when you buy a game now, you're like, oh, it's got bump map and specular and all that stuff. That everyone has it, but nobody had it, you know, before Doom 3 did to such an extent, you know, and the fact that every single texture, every single wall texture, every single character texture, every single weapon texture in Doom 3 started out as a high polygon model. So, you know, artists, you know, you think, well, I work on Photoshop, so I'm an artist. But now you had to be a modeler and an artist, you know, and really that skill set is difficult to learn if you've spent years and years and years in Photoshop. So that art path, technology ramp, was extremely difficult, you know, and it took, you know, quite a while. I mean, we have some of the greatest artists, you know. Kenneth Scott, you know, is our art director at id, and he's really the John Carmack of art. He's a brilliant artist, you know, and it's one of the things that, you know, when people talk about id, they talk about John, you know, because John's id, you know, but we really do have guys like Kenneth that are brilliant. So, you know, working with this art was extremely difficult, and then at the same time we had the realistic lighting, you know, where you have like a projected light, you see that light, you know, cast a shadow here, that's a projected light, and then we have you know, like point lights that were omnidirectional and things, and then, you know, John's famous Carmack's reverse, You remember what Carmack? Do you remember
I do
Carmack's
not
reverse?
remember that.
Yeah, so that's why our game ran faster than your game did. We had Carmack's reverse. No, but the
Come on,
Carmack's
we ran at 12, 15 frames a second pretty consistently.
You know, Carmack's reverse was that if you had two objects that were, you guys probably can't see this because, yeah,
It's interesting for me though.
there's two shadows. See, this thing is there's one light and there's two shadows. I'm probably going to screw this up. I hope John never watches this. And so basically, John figured out that you didn't have to draw these extra shadows here because they were shadows of shadows, you know. And so that's the layman's term of John's reverse, and that made a significant speed improvement. Speaking of significant John things, in every project that I've worked on, and I've known John since '95, every project, about midway through the project, he has a stroke of genius, and you know, he's like, that's it. And it's something that just makes it run fast, or makes it just totally exciting, or just makes it different. And it's this stroke of genius that, like a few years ago, we were talking about scheduling and planning and things, and I was like, well, I have your stroke of genius here planned, and he was like, what? And I was like, well, every game you halfway through you become a stroke of genius, so I just put it in the plan. And he's like, you can't do that. And I was like, always do it, John. Go for it. He's always done it.
Yeah.
You know, so we don't know what it is, you know, but it's always stroke of genius. So you know, I totally got off what I was talking about. Oh yeah, so we had the dynamic lights, which were, you know, every light in the game, even if it wasn't blinking or moving, was dynamic. And then we had, you know, the specular, the bump map, the height map, all that stuff, and we created, you know, the Doom 3 engine and that paradigm of texture creation, something that all games have. You know, Unreal's got it, Crysis got it, Source, they all got it. You know, the genesis of that was, you know, Doom 3.
So you said something when you were talking about the project, the schedule. That implies that it actually has schedules.
Yeah, of course we have schedules.
And project managers and stuff like that.
Yes. Yes.
How does that work? How do games get made at id?
How do games get made now at id? Or yes. Well,
yeah.
We've gotten much better. You know, for Rage, we actually have the classic pyramid structure. You know, where we have, you know, I'm creative director and project manager, cheerleader, scapegoat, HR department. You know, all those things. You know, my computer's too slow, Tim. And then we have, you know, Kenneth Scott is, you know, the art director and the artist, and then we have Robert Duffy, who's actually the programmer director. You know, John Carmack is, you know, somewhere up here. He's the chief technical director.
The guy who exists wherever he wants to exist.
Exactly. John wants to be over here. Wherever he wants to be over here.
That was Richard at Origin. That's sadly me at Junction Point. Yeah.
And then we have Matt Hooper, who's like the lead designer. You know, so we actually have a classic management style. You know, and I know that, you know, when you take game design classes and, you know, and management classes, you know, you always hear about, you know, there's different techniques, you know, for managing people and group dynamics and how, you know, how structured you want. So you really, it's whatever works for you, you know. But for us, you know, we keep a nice pyramid. It's still pretty flat when it comes to ideas. You know, at id we really try to, you know, hire, you know, very creative people, and, you know, and it's important for us to let everyone have a voice, you know, and to you know, to give ideas. I mean, my advantage that I have is I can self-censoring. I know when I come up with ideas that are bad. I come up with like 10 ideas and 9 of them are bad. Sometimes you come up with 10 ideas and 11 of them are bad. You know, so but, you know, and making a game, you know, as Warren, you know, can definitely agree to, that it's not one guy. One guy cannot design and manage and produce and make a game. It requires everybody. It requires that team. And the best managers and the best directors are people that find people that are more talented than they are. That's very important to remember. Whenever you hire someone, you need to find someone that's more talented than you are. They're not going to take your job. And you need to surround yourself by these people who are super creative, super talented at what they do. And it's your job is to push them in one vector. Just kind of get them working together. and you come up with a good game.
Now I completely agree with everything you just said, and I just want to know how you do it with 18 people, right? 20 people. How many people do you have
now
on
we're
Doom
up to like
3?
30. Well, Doom 3 we're 23 people.
See, that's tiny.
Yeah, it's still tiny. Like EA came down and they just finished some Medal of Honor game with some 200 something people. They were shocked that we did it with 23 people.
I had 93 on Deus Ex Invisible War at the end of the project. 93 people.
Yeah, we it's not easy. I mean, it really is. It's like again, we try to find people that can give, that are like 1.5 people. We pay them well, but we focus on, and I'll try to talk about this. I think I'm going to talk about my whole talk. I'm going to talk about before I talk about it. We really try to focus on the things that we can do well. I know we get criticized all the time. It's like, oh, Id, they just run around and shoot things all they do. But you have to remember that when working on a technology, at the same time that you work on a game, it's extremely difficult. So what you do is you get a group of people that are multi-talented, so they can work on, like our artists have to be. We don't really have a lot of tools. We don't have friendly tools for Doom 3. So the artists had to be very technically inclined. They had to write their shaders by hand. We had our level designers have to do scripting, have to do world building, have to have artistic talent in order to make it look good. Because we don't have a blockout guy, we don't have a lighting guy, we don't have so you really have to find people that are multi-talented, give them in an environment where they can do well. Focus on the things that you can do well. Don't try to do everything in your game, because games don't need it. If your game is supposed to be dark and scary and fast, make it dark, scary, and fast. Don't make it dark, scary, and fast with RPG elements. If your game is supposed to be an adventure with a great story, put the great story into it. And don't just focus on what you do well. Don't focus on everything. And we get criticized for being too narrow focused, but games like Doom 3, which was criticized for being too simple, 3.2 million copies sold. Gears of War, pretty simple, 4 million copies sold just on the 360. Halo 3, don't even get me started on Halo 3, 7 million copies sold. Games like BioShock, which I love, and BioShock's a great game, got like 95 Metacritic, the highest rated game since Half-Life 2. It's only sold, 1.1 million? And that's just the console. I'm not sure what the PC numbers are. It'll probably get up, because it's such a great game. But it is, at the end of the day, it's a job, and I love just to make this great game and creative and do all this great stuff, and this is my baby, my vision, and it tells a story, makes people cry. But then you're gonna get Team Arena.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna zip ahead. I'm gonna zip a little bit ahead here. We may come back to some of this stuff.
Sorry.
But, okay. Mr. Focus, Mr. Do What You Do Best, an outdoor driving game
with racing
from id.
Yes.
With a story.
With characters
to talk to.
It does have characters to talk to.
Okay, so
with brand new technology.
What happened to the advice you just gave?
Oh well, I'm crazy. That's why you should have Sandy Peterson come down. He's even more crazy.
I know.
So yes, with Rage, why did we decide to do Rage? So we're looking at our kind of inventory of titles. We have Doom, which is dark. Okay, we want to take all of our titles and kind of distill them down to their essence or their vision. So we have the Doom franchise, which is dark, intense, scary, fast. Hell, Earth versus hell, good versus evil. That's it. Then we have the Quake franchise, which kind of suffers from an identity crisis with Quake 2 and Quake 4 and Quake 3s. But we're gonna we want when you think of Quake, most people think of the deathmatch and the clans and that kind of stuff. So that's our multiplayer focused action type game. And then we have Wolfenstein, of course, our World War II franchise. We have Enemy Territory franchise, which we had Wolfenstein and Quake, which is our team-based multiplayer franchise. So, so with Rage, we want to do Rage as more of kind of this open world, more kind of adventure elements. It's still built and still, it's founded on classic first-person elements. I mean, that's what we do best. We're not going to change that. But for me, when kind of coming up with the game idea. Hold on, actually, let me back up a bit. After Doom 3, we worked on the Doom 3 Xbox version with Vicarious Visions, and then we helped Raven finish Quake 4. And we started a game which internally we called Darkness. And Darkness was your basic kind of classic, survival horror game. And it was moving along, and John was developing technology, and we had some cool art, and we had, and it has a good story. It has a really good story, actually. So we were working on Darkness, and, I just felt that it really wasn't, people weren't as excited about the game internally as they should be. And when you work on a game for 3 or 4 years, you need to be excited about it. I mean, it's hard to stay focused for that long if your game is kind of So, and I was looking at games that we like to play. And for me, I like games like Ridge Racer and Mortar Storm, but I don't like to play them that much. I mean, I like playing them for an hour or two, but I'm not really into the racing games. And then I like, adventure games, and I like, role-playing games, and I've played Oblivion, and I have, a character in WoW, and I like those games, but I don't really like them that much, and of course I love first-person games, so I wanted to kind of bring some elements together in a sort of kind of almost fun, kind of over-the-top sort of way. So, like, any time that we come to a junction when we're working on Rage, whether or not we can go realism or we can go fun, we will always pick fun. Even if the vehicles handle a little bit silly, if they're more fun, because I really want people to come back from Rage and say, that was fun. And they could say, it had a pretty good story, and the graphics were good, it's very good, but it was fun, and it has some elements that we've all seen before in other games. It's not coming up with this new genre, it's using the things that we like to play, the things that players like to play, and nowadays, most people, you all, have ADD when it comes to playing games. You don't like how many games have you actually finished, and so we want to give people, small bits of fun, action, arcadey feel tied together in this kind of cohesive, bigger picture. Now, the technology lends itself to this. We are a technology-driven company. We're not a technology company. People say, "Well, you're a technology company. You don't make games." But we're driven by this technology. So when John created the mega texture and the virtual technology, it really gave us an opportunity to kind of blow out the world. So, we could take this virtual unique textured ability and put it all over a Doom map, but you really wouldn't get it wouldn't work. You could do it, but players they weren't going to be able to stand in a valley and say, "Ooh, that's cool, look at that." It's all unique. So given that technology vision, we needed to do something that fit, So you take the ADD of our audience, you take the fact that we love playing all these different types of games that are really popular and really fun, and then you take this technology that John has so beautifully crafted, and so what do you get? And what we came up with is Rage. Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Mixing and matching and doing mashups of genres, I live for that stuff. It doesn't seem like that's id's sort of thing, until actually Quake Wars has some of that. It seems like it's got some RTS-ish elements, and it's big outdoor, army versus army combat.
Yes.
And it's using sort of a test version of the new tech, right?
Yeah.
So is that kind of a test case for Rage to see if you guys could pull it off? I mean, it wasn't even done at id; it was splash damage,
splash
right?
damage, yeah. We, John.
This is. Hold on.
There it is.
Enemy Territory Quake Wars we're talking about,
which is available now. So you should go buy it, and it's available on Steam.
Woohoo.
I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh yeah, so Doom 3. So John, again, it's hard to speak for John, but there was something, and I could be totally wrong about this. John probably get mad, but there was something that John was doing with his rocket stuff. That, there was some type of kind of overall kind of rendering of like a large area that, and you need to stream this data in. And I think that the genesis of his virtual texture came from some application that he needed to do with his rocket stuff.
God, it is rocket science. Carmack really does rocket science.
Yes, he does do rocket science. And unfortunately, if any of you watch the X Prize, and I won't get off here, but John competes in the X Prize, and this weekend he had an X Prize competition, but he had a mistake on the launch pad, blew up. But he does really cool stuff. But he hasn't, he's doing the lunar lander project where you got to take off, and then fly around and land again, and then then you have to repeat. But his landing gear caused him some issues. But yes, so John was working, I believe he kind of got the idea for some rocket stuff, and that led to the virtual texture stuff and the mega texture, which we put into the Doom 3 technology that we modified with some lighting changes, making it more, we have more baked-in lighting with Team Arena. And then that was kind of the genesis of the Rage technology, which then we built the whole structure on.
Okay.
All right. Sorry. Get off.
So I guess we'll talk about tech after in our later discussion here. So one last question about the individual games here, I guess, and your career looking back, and then we'll take a little break.
Okay.
Let you take a break, and then let you get to your presentation. But you've been at id since 1995 now.
Mm-hmm.
Been working in first-person shooters for 12 years. You ever feel hamstrung at all? I mean, is Rage like an attempt to just sort of break out and just finally, oh my gosh, I get to do something different? I mean, do you ever feel hamstrung? I feel totally sort of in a box. I mean, one of the reasons I really wanted to work with Disney is because they're letting me out of that box. Fans may hate it, but do you ever feel hamstrung by, id has to do a specific thing?
Yeah, fans. Yeah, we should talk about fans.
Okay.
Yes. The yes. I mean, if you feel boxed in, I mean, you have a great reputation. People are like, well, Warren, he's a brilliant game designer.
We're here to talk about
how can you be in a box?
We're
if you think you're in a box, we're in a little piece of rice. If you're in a box.
Yeah, but they're squeezing money through that tiny opening that is not coming to me. Okay.
But yes, you're right. We we definitely. I mean, it is what we do. I mean, and people are always saying, why don't you do something different? But
until you do something different,
at
which point they start
hate
screaming,
us.
"Why did you do something different?"
But first person. We invented the first person shooter. I mean, I people seem to forget that. John Carmack in Catacombs 3. Well, Wolfenstein was really the first one that anybody cares about. But the whole concept of walking forward with this gun in front of you that's us. And if that's what you do, stick with it. Ford doesn't make airplanes. IBM doesn't make burgers. That's what they do. This is what we do. I'm sorry. We can add things in, but like Rage is definitely, built on this first person element thing. And when we do try to do something different, or even change, the genre a little bit, people just get so upset. id has the fortune of having some of the world's greatest fans, and our fans have made us who we are. And QuakeCon is this event, that we throw every year, and it has huge fan support. It's driven by volunteers. I mean, what company can do that every year and be bigger and bigger? So we love our fans, but those fans that love us so much are usually the ones that we hurt the most, and the ones that are like, why did you do this? You're ruining something that I really care about. And then there's the other fans that are like, id's finally doing something different. So it's very difficult, to balance. I know that you have, great fans as well, and I know it's difficult for you as well. But it's first-person games is what we do, and action things and shooters and what we know how to do, and with Rage we're going to try to do something different, and we'll make some people happy, and we'll make some people unhappy. But the thing too is we've been around so long, and that a lot of people never even played original Doom or original Quake, and
Did you update Doom? Wasn't one of the Doom 3 mission packs or something? Didn't you update Doom in that? Or just like retell the story or something?
Well, I mean, Doom 3 is a retelling of Doom,
Yeah.
like it never happened. Yeah, the story
Yeah.
is, and
You didn't actually like recreate maps or anything, right?
oh no, because we actually thought about that, but I was like, because it's too difficult. Plus, the technology is light years ahead. We need to talk about the Doom movie too.
We'll get there.
And it sounds like you want me to go up there and do my talk.
I do.
Which
Look,
is
it's right after your talk. Your
which
talk
is
comes
not
right here.
But most of my
Doom
talks
movie.
can be very short because I said everything important.
That's fine.
Now I forgot what we were talking about. What were we talking about?
Retelling Doom.
Oh yeah, Doom.
Doing what you do.
Yeah, Doom
fans.
3 is we actually were going to call it Doom. We're going to call it Doom 2000. 4 or 3 or some 2000. We actually made a poster. It says Doom. I actually have it at home. It says Doom coming 2003. Like, whoops.
We all have those posters in our closet.
It was coming in 2003. It didn't actually get here in 2004.
I've got one that says Deus Ex, a Warren Spector game, coming 1997. That, needless to say, did not. Oh no, 98. 98. Sorry, that did not happen.
Yes. So we actually were going to call Doom 3 Doom, but we felt that would cause confusion, and then they had some brand issues with that. They were going to call it like Doom 2004 or 2003 or 2000 or 2X or something. So then we decided we'll just call it Doom 3, which goes back to Quake 2, which we should have called something different. But yeah, Doom 3 is a retelling of Doom as if Doom never happened.
Okay.
And
on that note, let's take a break.
Okay.
We'll come back. We'll have a very short talk because we already talked through everything, and then we'll get back to Q&A.
Well, hopefully, Warren and I talked about a lot of things that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. Again, I asked a bunch of people if their ultimate goal is to eventually make it into the the games industry. I think most people kind of said yes. There were a lot of programmers, a couple artists and stuff. So I'll kind of gear some of the stuff that I talk about to what you can do to to make it into the games industry, because it is becoming a little easier than it was when I started. So what am I going to talk about? Oh yeah, before I start, I have the world's most boring PowerPoint presentation. So I apologize for. I have one picture, I think. So I'm gonna do a brief history of id Software. A lot of that stuff, Warren and I already covered, but I'll mention spots that are relevant. Company philosophy. Talk a bit about Rage. I have a Rage preview to show you, and then challenges that we face when developing Rage. So, the brief history of id Software. Founded in 1991 by those nerds right there. Here we have John Carmack here in the blue shirt. Unfortunately, you don't see his shorts. Actually, are pink on the bottom. He's blue and pink, yes. John Romero in the middle, and his shirt, I'm not sure if you can read that from there, but it says, "Cool guys." Not true. And then we have the guy pointing with his mouth open, that's Tom Hall. Yeah, John Romero, Tom Hall. And then the guy in the back is Adrian Carmack, who's not brothers with John Carmack. And then, so those four are the original founders. John Carmack, right here, is the only one that's still at id, And then the guy in the middle is Kevin Cloud, he's still at id. And then Jay Wilbur. So the current owners of id right now is, John Carmack owns most of the company, and then Kevin Cloud, and then myself and Todd Hollinshead. So that is the original guys. That picture's pretty funny, isn't it, Warren? So key franchises, and again we'll talk more about these. Wolfenstein was. There were other games that the company did before Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein's the first game that people actually care about. There was some games that they did when they worked with Softdisk, but Wolfenstein really kind of put the company on the table. So I'm going to talk about some of the key impacts of why id Software is important, and I'm really not trying to just come down here and talk about how great my company is, but it really is. It really has had more of an influence on where we are today in gaming, more so than I think people realize. And we've been around for so long that people really don't know what the first game to do this was, what the first game to do that was. So hopefully I can lighten you today. Wolfenstein, the Doom franchise, the Quake franchise, Enemy Territory, the new IP, and then mobile games. And I don't really have much to talk about with mobile games, but there's some things that may be interesting. So impact of id Software. So really, the best way to look at the impact of id is to look at kind of what the great achievements were, and then what games made those achievements. Kind of highlighted those achievements. And like I said earlier, Wolfenstein really is the father of the first-person shooter. Now it's probably the great-great-great-grandfather of the first-person shooter, but it really was the first one to do it. Technically, Catacombs 3D, was first-person shooter, but this is the game that people actually care about. And if you have an old Apple IIe, you may remember a game called Wolfenstein, which was kind of this top-down, 2D thing that had nothing to. The guy that made that was not associated with it. John Carmack enjoyed that game, and discovered that the guy either had never registered it or the registration had terminated. So he asked him if he could use the name, and the guy's like, sure. And Wolfenstein was born. I'll actually talk about how we came up with the names, which is also kind of interesting. Wolfenstein really, at the time in the early '90s, PC gaming was kind of in its early stages. I mean, there were some cool games from Origin and companies like that, but the whole kind of PC focus and kind of legitimize PC gaming as a mainstream form of entertainment was really at its infant stage, and it really needed these catalysts to push it forward into what it is today, a billion dollar industry. With Wolfenstein and then Wolfenstein and Doom, one of the key components of the games was its shareware model. Now, we all know what shareware is. Well, I hope you know what shareware is. But it's basically you get a part of it for free, and then if you like it, you pay. And this was nothing new, before Doom. But Doom and Wolfenstein really kind of made it a legitimate business model. It really was the first breakout success in using the shareware model. And Doom was actually sold directly to customers. It was, it was downloaded millions of times, but the actual sales of the game is surprisingly low. Like, I think it's under 500,000. So now if we made a game that sold under 500,000, it would be a complete failure. We'd all be out of work. So it actually sold. Very little at the time, but because it was downloaded, because the share episode was so big, it really was almost like having a full game. So at this time, and around the early '90s, 94 or so, again, PC gaming, was really kind of breaking out and really, moving in this momentum. Games before this time, you purchased them at more kind of like ma-pa stores, but now they really were, becoming more mainstream. And a lot of that was due to these, some of the big titles. Myst, if you remember, Myst was also a huge title at that time. Really kind of brought in the whole, CD-ROM genre era. I meant, and Doom was right there. Now, many people believe that Doom was our most influential game, but I actually believe Quake was, and I'll talk about that. So another big thing that Doom had was it was really the first game to actually have multiplayer action gaming. Now, before this time, there were things like MUDs, which were these kind of text kind of worlds that you could connect to and you could adventure. It was like playing Zork online. So the concept of playing multiplayer, PC games wasn't anything new, but Doom really made it popular. I mean, it really kind of put it to a new level. People were picking up their computers, bringing them over to their buddy's house, and hooking up, LAN. This is probably the birth of the LAN party. LAN party, by the way, is an oxymoron. LAN party. Yeah, they should come up with something better, like Geek Gathering or Nerd Fest. Some would be much better than LAN party. So, Doom, really, brought gaming into the mainstream at the time that the potential of the PC was really exploding. Windows was the new Windows 3.1 was right on there in the cresp, and legitimized the shareware model. And the shareware model now, the popularity of these early games, not just Doom but other games, with the success of the shareware led to, I believe, the whole demo model. I mean, nowadays you won't buy a game unless you can play a demo. But before, these early games, you just went to a store and bought them. So, Doom, of course, great story. One thing to point about it is, we've always, with our games, try to focus on things that people can relate to. Like classic stories, good versus evil. In Doom, you're a soldier fighting against the hordes of hell. Things that very classic, very straightforward. So after Doom was released and made successful, John Carmack developed the first true 3D engine. And let me back up a bit. So Wolfenstein was, people called it the 3D engine, but it really wasn't. Basically. It was very flat. There was no looking up and down. Doom, you couldn't look up and down. There's no jumping. And you basically moved like this, and just the walls changed. The floor and ceilings were static at the static heights and stuff. And then when Doom came, it was kind of like 2.5D, where it wasn't really truly 3D, but we with trickery and a lot of hidden things and clever design, we made it feel that was more truly 3D. But you couldn't look up and down, and you couldn't jump. And a few years ago, Z-Doom was released. It's a very popular kind of update to Doom, and you can actually jump and look up and down, but I always turn that stuff off because it's just too weird for me to jump and look up and down in Doom. So, moving to Quake, Quake, came out in 1996, and the multiplayer component of Doom was so popular, and we enjoyed playing it at id so much that when we started development of Quake, that was our main focus. We actually designed and tested and tweaked the multiplayer component of Quake before we actually worked on the single player version of Quake, mostly because the design was so chaotic that multiplayer was the one thing that the whole team could kind of glom onto and really put your focus on. As young game designers and people that will eventually lead teams, if you can find an aspect of your game that the team gets excited about, an aspect that they can focus on, that's what you need to grow. That should become a core kernel of what your game is all about. So with Quake, multiplayer was really critical, for us to get working well and to get working fun. And so this was the first true 3D game. And was also the first truly polygon-made game. I know that now we take polygons for granted, but when we made Quake, everything was a polygon. The fire was polygons, the weapons were polygons. We had a few sprites for some effects, but it really was at the time the very first truly 3D game that uses polygons. And I know it sounds silly, but at the time it was a big deal. So so getting back to 1995, 1996. So we had, really the birth of the internet. Well, it wasn't really the birth. It was kind of like the maturing of the internet, where I remember at a time when at the office we were talking about the internet, new thing, and someone said, "Yeah, I heard there's like 100 new websites being developed a day," and we were like, "Whoa, that's crazy," And so this whole idea of the ease of use and the accessibility of the internet played well into John Carmack's theory on, well, it wasn't really a theory, but his he made a Quake multiplayer client server. Now before the client server architecture was developed, you had to know the person that you were going to play with. So like for Doom, you had to call your buddy up and say, "Hey dude, we're going to play." "All right," and then you and then you connect. There was some weird way to connect over the internet, but you really had to be in like the same office or in the same like college campus or same like building, and you'd use like IPX, and you had to sync up, and if one person got out of sync, it would throw everything out of whack. But with Quake, we had client server architecture, and again, this is something that people take for granted. It's like, well, client server, you have like, wow, it's a big server and you connect into it. But again, nobody had made an action game with graphics and fast, and you could just connect in, that worked so well over the internet, and people were all excited about the internet. The whole world was now shrinking, and we had a game that you could jump into a server in Sweden or London or Asia, and it was exciting. I remember the first time that I played a game in Sweden. I was like, "This is incredible! This guy's in Sweden right here. This guy." It was amazing. Now we take this stuff for granted, and now we have to dodge, gold farmers from China, and wow. But it was exciting, the world was shrinking, and people, like, it was more difficult at this time to find servers that were up, and mostly that was because John didn't do a really good job at the server browser. So smart admins were starting to track on these dedicated websites like Aftershock lists of servers that were up. So people would actually post to this admin, "Oh yeah, I'm running a server at this IP address," and he would post it on the website. Aftershock was the first website, and then what happened is on this website, the guy started putting news, like new patch coming out, John Carmack buys in the Ferrari, all this kind of new stuff, and that actually, led to a lot of these, dedicated gaming websites, and like popular websites nowadays, like Planet Quake or Planet Half-Life or GameSpot and all those things. A lot of that, the genesis of those ideas and that concept came from people working with these servers, like Quake Spy actually became GameSpy, and now we all use GameSpy for all our games. But that was largely due to the fact that we had a really bad server browser in Quake. So there weren't a lot of servers out there. It wasn't like today where you could find thousands of servers. There were only a few people running servers. So the same people connected into the same servers. And what happened is people were like, "Hey, this guy's fun to play with. Hey, this guy's fun to play with. We should get together and play together. And we should play against that group. And we should call ourselves the whatever." And the birth of these Quake clans, was generated, by playing Quake. And we at id had no vision of this. We did not plan it. We did not speculate on it. We did not envision that these clans would appear. But it was amazing to us. I remember looking at websites where it was like Quake clan webpage, and it had all these different clans, and you could click on them and you could just read a little description. This is before like MySpace, where they had like cool websites and stuff. But and it was fascinating that the world was shrinking. people were getting together, people were meeting friends online. They were connecting together, they were forming these clans, and they were building this community. And from those communities, you had things like QuakeCon, you have the CPL, you have pro gaming. Doom had a few tournaments, but it was pretty difficult to do because of the logistics of getting people together. But with Quake, again, the world was shrinking. And a lot of the things that as gamers we take for granted nowadays, has a birth that goes back to to Quake. I mean, there's actually people that I know even to this day that I don't know what their real names are. I just know them by their Quake name. So and because of where we are today, and the landscape of internet gaming, and what Quake originally did to help foster that I personally believe, and you can argue another way, but I personally believe that Quake was actually more influential than Doom was. So I talked about internet gaming. Look at that, I'm moving along in my boring presentation here. Okay, so mods. As I said earlier, John Carmack, the visionary of the company, the leader the leader of the company, he has always believed that sharing what you do, allowing people to look at your code, getting feedback, working with groups of people makes the world a better place. It's very, very beautiful thought. So he's always been very open to sharing, and because of that, he's allowed access to the code base, has allowed access to the SDKs, allowed access to a lot of the tools, and with Doom, you had the ability to make modifications, make WADs, and then went to mods, and now total conversions and things like that. So really, the whole kind of homebrew modding industry and kind of movement that we have today, that is unfortunately kind of dying off, was born from Doom, because again, no one else had done this before Doom. It's what got me my job in the industry, and actually every single level designer at id did a mod, worked on levels in their spare time because they loved to do it, and because they were good, because they they finished the mods, it led to them getting a job at id. John says, and I agree with him, that modding a game is the best resume you can ever do. And here's some advice for y'all. Lots of times we see potential designers or programmers that come to id and and they're interviewing, and they have a few things that they've done, and we look at their mods, and they always a lot of them say, well, I never finished this one, and this one's not finished, and I was working on this one, but then I started working on this one over here, and this one never. That's bad. It's we creative type people with ADD never have a hard time finishing things, and candidates that come to us with they don't need a lot of things that are half done. You need a few things that are finished. When you start something, to finish it. No matter how hard it is, no matter how much you want to do something else that's cooler, if you're working on a mod or a small game, or just working on a art portfolio, you need to finish things. Leave the unfinished stuff out of the portfolio. We don't want to see it. Trust me. So mods and sharing. Mods have led, there's Counter-Strike started out as a mod, Team Fortress started out as a mod, Enemy Territory started out as a mod. There are lots of huge mega hits that started out as a mod, and that is gone back to the philosophy that John Carmack has, that you should allow people to modify your stuff. He once said it'd be fun to make an engine someday and just to give it away for free to see what the world does with it. John also has given away every single source code for every game that we've done up to Doom 3. So as soon as the technology becomes unlicensable, and we have no chance of generating revenue from it, then he open sources it or open GLs it or whatever. Well, yeah. Another thing that was huge that the company had a huge impact on was engine licensing. Now there are companies that do middleware, that is, they make an engine just to be licensed and they don't actually make a game. But one of the things that John believes is that if you can make a technology that is robust enough and it's easy enough to use, then other people can use it to build their games. With Wolfenstein was actually was licensed. Warren worked on that game. Doom was, and then the Quake series. The Quake series, it was actually our most licensed technology yet. And the Quake series, the games, I listed some of the huge ones: Half-Life, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor. There was Star Wars games, Star Trek games. Of all those games that just have used the Quake, that's Quake 1 through 3, those games have generated over $1 billion of revenue. Some of the biggest ones there, like Half-Life, even the source code, has origins that go back to Quake licensing. The impact that John has had on not just gaming but also other people's companies and other games is really huge. So as we move towards the present, like what are we doing now? And we talked a bit about Doom 3 with Warren and how it was unique, so I won't go into that again. And the mobile gaming. So this is kind of a funny story. Oh, and I forgot to talk about the names. So talk about mobile gaming, then I'll talk about the names. So John was on vacation. His wife dragged him on vacation, and he had a cell phone and he was playing with it, and he went to one of those Hendango websites or whatever, and he downloaded a few games, and he's like, "Whew, these games suck." He goes, "I can make a better game than this. This game sucks." And so that was really the birth of our mobile division. John felt that he could just do better. And he actually likes, and again, I try not to speak for John, but he actually likes the small sized, very discrete, manageable, development cycle, the closed system. You can come up with a game idea and get it done relatively quickly to test out ideas and theories and things. And John kind of misses the days where the company made Doom in like a year, or Wolfenstein, Spear of Destiny in like 4 months, because now it takes years. And as I said earlier, to get a team to focus on one game for years is extremely difficult. So and for John, he's so brilliant and he has so many ideas and his mind's going this way and that way, that he really kind of likes the whole kind of cell phone concept, where he can come up with an idea, leverage a technology, leverage a brand that we already know is popular, and do something fun. So he worked with Fountainhead, and he made Doom RPG, and it was a turn-based kind of RPG. You could level up and you could get stats in the Doom universe, and was a great seller. It sold a lot. I don't know what the number is, but it's big, because there's just so many cell phones out there, and so John really kind of likes that whole. He kind of feels like the old days. He kind of feels like the days when you could just make a game with your buds for a couple weeks and have it be done. So so in his spare time, when he's not working on next gen technology or building rockets, he helps Fountainhead out with their mobile stuff. The names. That's it. So Wolfenstein was an Apple IIe game. Doom. This is a funny story. So the guys meaning Tom Hall, John Romero, Adrian, and John Carmack, started working on basically a game after Wolfenstein. And Tom Hall wanted to do something that was a little more cartoony and kind of goofy, and something that was, you know, kind of a little more funny and stuff. And you know, so they actually started working on that game. And I can't remember exactly what that game name was. So the guys went to see Aliens 2. You know, the one that James Cameron did. And John Carmack's in the theater, and he's like, "That's it. That's the game I want to make." You know, so they got back to the office. He said, "I want to make Aliens." You know, well, I can't make Aliens because someone else already owns that. So they're like, no. You know, I want to do, you know, fast, intense, scary. You know, things coming at you from all over. That's the game I want to make. So they're like, okay. So they started on this game, but they had no name for it. And so this is the funny story. This is the funny part of the story. So John was watching the Tom Cruise movie, The Color of Money, and there's a scene where Tom Cruise shows up in a pool hall, and he's got his pool cue stick in a case, and he walks up to the crowd, you know, and he puts his case on the pool table, and someone says to him, "What's in the case?" And he opens up and he says, "Doom." And John was like, "That's it," you know. And he had this vision of opening a laptop and seeing Doom, you know. So yes, Tom Cruise, Doom. You never would have thought. And so then Quake. You know, after they worked on Doom, you know, they started working on Quake, and they needed a new name for that. And you know, at the office, the guys would play Dungeons and Dragons, and you know, John Carmack's character in one of the campaigns was named Quake, so he named it after his Dungeons and Dragons character. See, you thought we came up with like names that made sense. And then Rage. Yeah, coming up with names is really hard. Marty Stratton actually came up with the name Rage. Marty's our director of business development. And basically, when we were talking about the concept, you know, I said, you know, we have racing, you know, and we want to run things over, you know, and then you have this like garage where you can put your car in, and you can buy, or you can, you know, win upgrades for it. And so he wrote the word garage down, and was like, oh, it's got the word Rage in it. That makes sense. So that's how we got Rage. It's really not that exciting. So with that, let's talk about company philosophy, which I kind of hinted on before, so I won't go into this too much. But small, agile development. I mentioned before, you know, our philosophy is to keep the team small. That way, when you decide to change direction, or you have a technology path that you didn't think was going to work out, or if you you know, if things just kind of fall apart, you have the flexibility to change. You know, we're very small, but and we're privately owned, and we're self-funded, and it's very important that every one of our games is successful. You know, and because, you know, we live and die by our franchises. If we make a couple bad games, you know, we're out of business. So it's very important that we have the flexibility and the agility to make choices that other companies that are larger couldn't make. You know, if we were 150 people and we decided to get rid of Quake 2 Part 2 and do Quake 3, we would have never been able to do that. Activision would have been like, oh, no way, we've sunk too much money, so, you know, you can't do that. You know, historically, we have been, you know, a single internal team focused. Basically, you know, we have the best people that we can find. We all focus on one idea, because we believe that if you have a group of people and they all have the same basic vision and they all want the same thing to happen, you will eventually get there. And so we've used that philosophy to help drive our internal product development. And then what we've done is, with these other IPs and franchises that we have, you know, Doom, Quake, Wolfenstein, Enemy Territory, we've partnered up with outside development teams, and then we've kind of managed, or maybe like executive produced or directed them, because we don't have the time, because it takes, you know, 3-4 years to develop a game. We don't have the time to do all of these games internally, and we don't want to grow the company too large, because once a company passes like 50, 75 people, then it just there's lots of things that you never think about. There's HR issues, there's personnel issues, there's, you may not be able to get the cream of the crop. If you want to find 20 people, you can get 20 really good people. If you want to find 80 people, 60 maybe, So then you start to run into, games that aren't as, well polished and well refined as the ones that we've done historically. And again, like I said before, game development is not one person. Even Will Wright is not an island by himself. He's got people that are very, very talented that work with them. It requires a team, and you need to surround yourself with people that are really, really good at their jobs. We're, like I've talked a lot already tonight about technology-driven, not technology company, where, again, John is the best at what he does, and you need to take advantage of what you do well. So as someone that's looking for a job in the industry, you need to find what your specialty is, and you need to focus on what that is, and you need to be better at that than anyone else, and you need to practice that specialty. When I talk to artists, I tell them, artists that want to get into the industry, I tell them they need to practice every day, every single day, because someone else is doing it, and that's the person that we're going to hire, and it's a very difficult industry to get into. It's much easier now, but it is very difficult, and the people that truly have passion and love for what they do are the people that get the jobs, that end up and be successful. And you just need to practice every day. And if you're a programmer, you need to find something, a small little project. You need to find your own, maybe buddy up with an artist, make a little mini game, even if it's silly and you think that no one will like it. It shows that you have the ability to work with an artist or a designer and to create something from start it, manage it, and then finish it. That is so important. I can't tell you how much we like programmers when they show up that says, I made this little game. I mean, even if it's something silly, it just speaks volumes, because we get so many, great people that on paper, well, I worked here and I worked here and I'm great at this and I'm great at this, and in college I was like the smartest kid in college. But the guy that comes in with a little silly game is the person that we pay the most attention to. And then multi-skilled employees. Again, we are so small. And I know I said find what you're good at and focus on it, but at id, our artists are really very technically savvy, because technology changes and technology shifts. They need to be able to, to not use the slickest tools because they're not available. Our designers need to be scripters, partial artists. They need to be lighting experts. So we really, again, try to find the best people that can do a lot of things. And then I also talked about managing, produce external games. So let's talk a little bit about Rage. That's our logo. Do you like it? It's all right? Cool. That's good, because logos are harder than names. They really are. Because, again, everything that you do, and Warren will definitely agree with this, every decision and everything added into a game is subjective. Everything. And when you have a group of people that are personality people who are very creative, very intelligent, who have very clear ideas, it's impossible to make them all agree. And you really have to find you don't want to compromise on quality, or you don't want to compromise on ideas, but you need to find a nice middle ground. You need to try to get everybody. People are not going to be this, okay? You can't get this, but you can get this. This is bad. This is good. This is impossible. So, think about that, when you're working with small groups. Because I know that in colleges, you have these little small group projects. You're not always all going to be in sync, perfect. Just try to stick in the same direction. So logos, very difficult to come up with, because you make like 100 of them and everyone hates all of them. Or one person likes this one, people like this one, so we're very happy with this one. All right, so I'm going to show a quick little teaser trailer, and then we'll talk about the game. So this is this next trailer is something that we showed at QuakeCon. Turn it up. There you go. This is all in-game.
I know what you want, forgotten man, but I have to tell you, you have a long road ahead of you.
So there's a little teaser trailer. I talked a bit about this already, the genesis of the Rage idea, so I won't go into that again. The new technology, I talked about that some already with the, but I'll cover that again real quick. Basically, the foundation of the new technology is the ability to uniquely texture the entire environment. You know, usually in like a first-person game and in many games, you have certain tiles that you place around the world and it tiles. With this technology, we have the ability to really throw as many art assets or as many artists on the project as we can afford and as time allows. And with the stamping and the texture streaming, really create a world where every place that you visit is different. Now, there's a logistical issue that you need to deal with that, is that, you know, you have to, you know, not every single character is going to be completely different, but we can rearrange the characters in a sort of way where it feels completely different. We don't have an infinite number of artists, but we can construct the world in such a way where it feels, you know, truly unique. We can build these nice big vistas. We can really kind of blow out, you know, the levels and make them, you know, much larger. And it's you know, it's scalable too. One thing that well, it's scalable in the sense that you can make a 60 hertz game, you know, that may not have all the bells and whistles that some other games have, but you really want to stick to a precision type experience. Or you can make a 30 hertz game that, you know, and most people really can't tell the difference between 30 and 60, especially on a console, and that has, you know, more of the you know, the game code, more game code in there. And game code is like physics and effects and particles and, you know, AI and things like that. So so the engine is scalable. The engine is also multi-platform. You know, one thing that is a sad reality of the world that we live in now is that if you only make PC games, you will not be able to survive because too many people steal your game. We are being killed by piracy. It is just it is like on one website that I saw after the release of Quake 4 is that Quake 4 was downloaded, I think, from that site 5 million times. I mean, that's 5 million shoplifters that ripped off, you know, Quake. And I hear, well, I've tried the game before I, you know, buy it, and if I like it, I'll go back and buy it. No, you're still stealing. You know, it's really that simple, you know. And so piracy in the PC market is killing us, and it's forcing us to develop cross-platform games, you know, because realistically people steal less 360 games than PS3 games. So, you know, one of the great things about John is that when he starts a new technology, it's not built on the old technology, you know, so we don't have a lot of legacy stuff left over from previous engines. So when developing, you know, the Attack 5, the Rage technology, you know, he took multi-platforms into consideration. So some of the struggles that other people have had with the PlayStation 3 hasn't actually been that difficult for us. It's still a difficult platform to develop on, You know, whereas, you know, the 360, because Microsoft is a software company, really has made some really nice tools for developing in 360. The PlayStation 3 really isn't as bad as most people say it is. You know, and that's because we've taken some of the multi-core issues into consideration at the framework of the technology. You know, and then so, you know, the IdTech 5 is one single code base with multiple renderers in it, and it really allows us to, you know, run 360 version, run the PS3 version, run the Xbox, you know, PC version, and also like the Mac version. You know, the Mac, you know, nowadays Macs are so similar to PCs that it's pretty easy to develop for both. So historically, what we've done and what other companies have done is they've made the PC version, and then they work with another company to develop like the console version. And usually they spend millions and millions of dollars trying to take a cool PC game and shove it into a console. And with IdTech 5, we use the exact same art assets and resources, and the engine takes care of each platform. So it really, you know, we believe, again, because we're small, we had to do this to survive ourselves. We believe that, you know, this technology can shave off millions and millions of dollars of development time, where people would normally have to pay another company to port their game. Art is totally scalable. Talked about that. Oh yeah, outsourcing. We'll talk about that real briefly. You know, there. One of the cool things about IdTech 5 is the engine allows an artist, after it's, you know, basically the levels are constructed, the environments are built, to go in and spend as much time as they want on making it look as cool as possible. They can put as many stamps down. Stamps are these projected textures that kind of, you know, blend into the into the mega texture. They can spend as much time drawing individual rocks or landscapes or spray painting, and with no hit to performance. Historically, when you're working on a game and you design a level and then you pass it to the artist to make it look better, they usually put too many lights in or too many textures in, and then, you know, it comes back to you and it's all slow and the artist broke it because they don't know what they're doing, and you have to fix it all. But with IdTech 5, you can pass it off and they can make it look as pretty as they want, so which lends itself well to outsourcing. Now outsourcing, you know, is really kind of picking up massive speed in the last 5 years. I mean, there's companies in all through Europe and Russia and China that are pretty capable. You know, they have, you know, the talent there and the skill set there, that they're able to take, you know, parts of IdTech 5, and you can just take them, you can ship it to them, they can work on it, and then they can ship it back. You know, so on top of being multi-platform, we're also pretty friendly when it comes to outsourcing as well. You know, so you know, really, you know, we're really trying to find elements of the technology that allow us as a small company to basically survive, really. So the Rage team, real quick, talk about the Rage team. Yeah, and this will be quick. We have programmers, artists, and designers. Since we have so many programmers in the group, I'll talk about what we like in programmers. There's two types of programmers: good ones and bad ones. No, I'm just kidding. There's smart ones and dumb ones. No. There's programmers that do exactly what you tell them to do, and then there's programmers that are game programmers. Now, the difference is this. At id, you know, because we're small, because technology shifts, we rely on our programmers to be creative, to be like, to make it as cool as possible. For instance, if I tell a programmer, okay, I need the rocket launcher to shoot rockets, you know, and they're like, well, okay. So one programmer will go off and they'll make the rocket, and the rocket will shoot up. And then another programmer will make it shoot and give it like variable speed and a little cool trajectory and cool explosion, and, you know, and actually do something that's like fun because it makes it cooler, you know. And I know this is a subjective word. And then the first programmer comes back and says, oh, okay, I made the rocket shooter or the rocket launcher, and I was like, well, that's not very cool, you know. And the guy's like, well, you did exactly what you told me to do. And the other guy comes back and says, "This is cool. I made it cool, and I kind of changed it like this. I hope you don't mind, but it's much cooler like that." That is the type of programmer that really thrives in our organization. Now I know companies like EA and well, I shouldn't really bash EA, but I know companies that are large sometimes frown upon that, and they really, if you're a programmer, you need to do exactly what it says and don't deviate, and this is how we get the game done. But in a small company like us, we really need programmers to make it cool, and to really think about making it as exciting as possible. AI, is something that really is one of those core components that if you take programmer A who's uncreative and you tell them I want the characters to attack and retreat and to shoot me and to die, they'll make just that. And you take programmer B who has some creativity and who wants to really make it fun and cool, they'll explore new things. They'll come to the table with ideas. They'll try out stuff. They'll prototype things, and those are the programmers that really, again, do well in small teams. Again, our artists at id are very multi-talented. Like I said before, no longer do we have just 2D artists. We no longer have just Photoshop guys. Everybody works on every texture that's made in the game on any surface. It starts out as a high polygon model, so all our artists need to be very proficient at the modeling tools. They're also our artists, and I think most artists should become kind of technically savvy, or technically skilled, where they can talk to a programmer. Another thing, artists and designers should take some basic programming classes so they can communicate with the programmers. Because if programmers think that you don't know what you're talking about, they'll trick you. It's true. It's true. Yes, it's because they're like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I can tell him this. So it's important that designers and artists take some basic programming so they don't get fooled by the programmers. So artists at id, are very technically, inclined. They, handwrite shaders. They work with tools that are not solid, not finished, not refined. So again, as an artist, I would definitely encourage people to not just be an artist, be a technical artist. And then designers, designers at id really do a lot of things. Finding that classic level designer is really difficult to do these days. A classic level designer is a person that does the architecture, the gameplay, puts the textures in, does the lighting. Nowadays in most companies you have like a map builder, and then you have an artist come in and work with that, then you have a scripter, and that works for very processed and managed games, but as we all know, games are very fluid, and ideas come and change, and and things need to be more dynamic. At id, we found that if you team up one artist with one designer, and then you give the designer the knowledge, the scripting knowledge, and how to make physics objects, and and then you let them be a little artistically inclined. If you pair them up and you work with them from the get-go, have an artist work with the designer right from the concept, it makes a much better process. So the designers at id have to know all these different concepts, especially since we're small, and they have to be teamed up with an artist who is also pretty technically inclined, and then together they can make a really great map. I think I'm getting near the end. Challenges faced. Okay, I think I've already talked about all this stuff. Design a game at the same time your design technology is incredibly difficult. Yes. Like I said earlier, lots of times, it gets criticized for, well, your games are so simple, there's no story. But the fact that we've done things that no one else has done before, that we've continually made these technology advances that people follow. It's difficult to do everything. That's why we focus on things that we do well, and we try to make them as fun as possible. We talked about fluid, flexible design. I talked about focusing on key elements, small group goals, and game design document structure. Does anyone care to hear my theory on game design documents, or no? All right. It's a 7:30. I better hurry up. I'll make this quick. As a game designer or a producer, if you write a 300-page document, you may be very proud of yourself. And you may be able to brag to your friends that I wrote a 300-page design document, but nobody's going to read it. You know, the people on the ground, the guys in the trenches that are making the stuff are not going to read it. And you will lose them. You know, you need to construct the game design document in very digestible chunks. You know, you need to have game design and game production has a very human element. You really need to go and talk to your designers and your artists, and you're like, okay, you are working on this part of the game, and this part of the game is important because of this. Just tell them that. That's all they need to know, because then they'll be happy. If they know that they're working on this part of the game and it fits in like this, and they kind of basically get the game, that's all they know, because they're not going to read this 300-page document. And plus, it's too hard to update. You know, you'll spend all your time updating and updating and updating, and for what? Just say that you wrote a 300-page game design document. It's just not important. You know, so at id, there are a number of tools that we use to try to get this information down to digestible chunks. One program that I really like is Mind Manager, where it's you know, the way I think is kind of chaotic, and it allows me just to add ideas, you know, and then let them grow. That works well for finding things, because another problem with 300-page game design documents is you can't find anything. Or if someone else comes in and says, well, how many weapons do we have? You know, it's too hard to find. But if they go to like a Mind Manager and go weapons, oh, we have this many. You know, it really works out well. Another thing that that we also use at id is, you know, a wiki. I know that wikis are a big rage now. Wikis are cool. Wikipedia, not cool. Okay. The wikis work well. You know, programmers actually tend to use wikis more than designers or artists. Artists are really kind of afraid of writing anything. So you really have to like grab their hand and bring them over and explain it to them. And that's fine, you know, everyone's different. So our team has really well organized, our programmer team has a well organized wiki that they all, you know, contribute to. And then the designers, because the designers are really on the ground, they're the guys making the game design decisions. You know, really just weekly meetings with them are fine. You know, just kind of tell them, you know, what's going on and get input from them. And really, that's really kind of all you need. You know, you need a producer that has that big long project thing that's, you know, that nobody reads. So you need that guy to make sure that you're all on track, of course. And then we also have, you know, based on milestones and kind of technology that we want to test, we have scrums as well too. You know, and you know, a scrum description is a whole kind of half-an-hour talk. But basically, a scrum is, you know, is very small, focused, achievable goal organization that, you know, that has like lines in the board stuff, and you move these cards over. That works out well for us. So if you're not familiar with what a scrum is, you should look that up, because that's kind of cool. So we use Mind Manager a lot. You know, we have the wiki. We have our tools, our id Studio tools where the, you know, where the editor is and things like that. That actually links to the wiki, because you also need to put people's tasks. Oh, and that has a task manager. You need to have people's tasks and the information that they need as accessible as possible. If you can put everything into one program, the better. Because if someone has to open a program to read something, they won't do it. I know it sounds silly, it's just the way it is. So put it all together as unified as you possibly can. So we have the Mind Managers, we have the wikis, we have the web page that also has like some forums stuff so people can bitch about things. And then we have individual, you know, or small group scrums, and then we have small group design, you know, story times is what we call it. And that's basically how we get the design concepts to the team. But that right there in itself is a whole hour-long talk. So that's the 5-minute version. And I think that's it. There we go. So do we have questions? Oh, right here.
Do you have someone that acts as a liaison between programmers and artists, or they fall into that by themselves?
Well, the leads. I mean, we have, the client. Like if a programmer needs something, they just talk to the leads, and then. But again, we're really small, so sometimes they may just walk over to, like if something breaks, that's usually when you find the programmer the fastest. But yeah, we go through the leads or the producer. We have one producer, Jason Kim's on the project. He keeps track of that project. But you need to, sometimes programmers don't like talking to artists, but it's important that you have an environment where people are kind to each other, because you know how programmers can get. That's the way it is. You're just an artist, you don't understand. So, in the back.
Is Mixom a metal company or something? Because it's in Doom 3 and I saw it on like a...
Yes. Mixom works... This is like Doom and Rage and all these other things. We're less crafty than people realize. Mixom works forwards, backwards, and upside down. So any way that you write it, it actually makes sense. So sometimes if we accidentally flip a texture, then it makes sense. That's really it. That's as crafty as we are. Yes.
Can you talk about the scripting functionality that's exposed to designers in id Tech 5 and how that had evolved over successive generations at id?
Oh yeah, Jim Dosey was a programmer that worked at Ritual, and he worked on Sin, and with the Quake 3 technology, he actually wrote a basic scripting language that was very kind of like C-Lite, and then he came to id, so he integrated that into the Doom tech, and then basically it's kind of evolved into it's actually more C++. No, not really C++. There's no objects. It's more like C now, and so for the designers, having a basic understanding of the C concepts really helps out a lot. But you can really do almost anything. And one thing that we found out is that if you're scripting, as a designer, if you keep scripting the same thing over and over again, you should pass it off to a programmer to do it in code. And because we found that if you go and you spend 2 hours, well, if you spend all day working on a simple little script, the programmer can usually do it much quicker, and they can make like a little super entity, and then that'll just work. It'll be more robust. It'll be and then everybody can access that. So for Rage, we use the scripting language and scripting to kind of help the designers prototype things, but it is a little bit slower, So we'll probably end up moving a lot of that script just right over to code to make it faster.
How does crediting work? Like, I know you sort of have everybody sort of contribute to the overall, how do you figure out, what someone's role is and what, they'll eventually be credited with?
Yes, that actually is a very good question. And at id, and we've kind of shied away from this recently, but at id we've tried to keep it as simple as possible. That's why if you look at some of the older credits, it's just like design, art, and programming. Whereas one guy that worked on a lot of sound in Quake really is just a designer, and he actually wasn't actually credited for that, But our philosophy has changed a bit. That if you do a significant amount of work on something, then you should be credited for it. Now, we always argue with our publishers about credits because we have 13 pages that were given to make a manual. We have 1 page for id. We have 6 pages for the publisher credits, and then that leaves us 4 pages to write the manual. So because at the publisher level, everybody and their brother is on the credits for something, and so when you see major publisher and then a whole bunch of list of people, you need to look at that with a kind of a dubious eye. But if you see small developer and then you see a small list, those are usually correct. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So basically, it's a judgment call, and if you did a significant amount of work or a reasonable amount of work, then you'll be credited for that. So historically, id credits have been a little light. If we don't give credit to anybody for anything, then nobody will get mad. but we've since changed that a little bit.
Can you tell us more about the Doom movie?
Oh, we never talked about the Doom. We forgot to talk about the Doom movie.
I knew someone would ask.
The Doom movie was great. I don't care what you guys all say. Yes, I put 5 stars on my Netflix. Netflix, 5 stars. And then I made everyone else that did put 5 stars too down. No, Universal, like the Doom movie idea was tossed around for a while. I mean, Universal originally had it, then Warner Brothers had it, and then went back to Universal. And it really kind of was like the perfect storm where Universal was looking for that type of genre. The game was being released, and before we actually shipped the game, we had put together these presentations that were very visual, very movie-like, almost. And then the art was very high quality, and the cool lighting. We had the whole cinematic feel, and we actually took that, and we worked with CAA, their agent. And we actually went, we actually went to CAA, and they have this really cool kind of screening room, and we brought everybody in there. We even had Tom Cruise's company, come through, and we showed it off as, an engine that could do movie quality work, and that really kind of got people kind of talking about it, and really, made more excitement with the project, and then when we got a producer, we had John Wells and Lorenzo Bonaventura. When those guys got on it, and you need a producer, and as soon as you have a producer, everything kind of works. So Universal was looking for that type of genre, and the game was just released, and it really was kind of the perfect situation. What was interesting was that the Xbox version of Doom 3 sold well, and then it kind of dropped off. And when the movie came out, they spent like $30 million in marketing, and we got a significant, uptick on our Doom 3 sales, which is interesting because, a lot of publishers say, well, your game is sold out, we're not going to advertise it anymore. But that was a really kind of good example of why if you can still push titles through clever marketing and sell them. Oh, because basically you have your landscape, and these like the stamping is projected textures. So you drop in all these textures, and you drop in a model, and it has a texture density, and then what it does is it gets processed, and it's like I'm probably gonna mess this up, but it's like flattening an image in Photoshop, and then what John does is he takes and makes this mega, and you can actually look down on it, it's this huge texture page, and he rearranges all of the textures in a way that they stream efficiently, and they fill in the texture page in the most efficient way possible. So you can put all these stamps down, all these different textures, but then they get applied to one. So if you stamp over like an old texture, then it just goes away basically. And then the texture density, you can turn that up and down. So if you have a lot of space, then you can crank it up, and if you need to have less space, you can turn up the compression. So basically, it's like flattening layers. But those layers are then saved, so you can re-edit them.
Speaking about licensed property, can you speak about Super Noah's Ark 3D?
Super Noah's Ark 3D. Is that an old was that the soft disk game?
I think it was. Yeah, it did come out on Super Nintendo.
Yes, you'd have to wait for John to come down and give the talk, and you have to ask him. I have no idea.
I would really like to know why.
I have no idea. That was before my time.
You talked a little bit about level design,
Mhm.
particularly multiplayer. Do you have any tips for single player level design?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a whole class too. Quick tips on single player level design. Make it fun. I'll talk about Half-Life. So I'll talk enough about id stuff. I'll talk about Half-Life now. One of the great things that really I talk about Half-Life 2. One of the great things that Half-Life 2 does is they present you a puzzle. Well, okay. They have like the gravity gun. You play through the game, you finally get the gravity gun. Then they have this little training mission that they do that is kind of feeds into kind of like the story and the immersion of that that weapon. And then you're faced with at first very simple puzzles that you need to overcome with the gravity gun. And then once you overcome those simple puzzles, then you get the next gun, and then they arrange the play experience to take advantage of that particular gun at that time. And the formula is actually very simple, but they do it in such a great way that it just seems very transparent. So you basically need to present your players with something new, give them immediate use for that thing. Lots of times you get some cool weapon, you never use it, and you kind of forget about it. Give them a easily overcomable challenge that rewards them, and then that basically trains them to use that new item or that new thing. And then you need to always give people something that they can shoot for. One of the great things about a game like WoW is you see these level 70 guys running around, you're like, ooh, I want that. Whereas in classic games, you don't know that there's a BFG at the end of the game, or you don't know that you're going to have the super cool, badass weapon. So you need to kind of show the player and give the player goals and something that they can strive for, and tell them, if you do this, you can get this cool weapon. And then when you get this cool weapon, we're going to give you a challenge you can overcome with it. So that's basically what they do in Half-Life 2 that makes the game so cool.
How do you approach prototyping when you're developing new tech all the time? How do you prove that this game is fun or this mechanic's going to work when
Yes.
you don't have the tools or the...
Yeah, actually I have a it's called where do I have like funneling game design? Oh, I must have removed that. Yes, we do try to prototype as much as possible, and with the Rage stuff, we prototyped in the Doom 3 engine. That makes sense. But and I was talking to the lead designer of BioShock, which is a cool game, last week, and he said exactly the same thing that we have to do. You start out like this, and you have all of these assets, and you have all these ideas, and you have these pieces of the game. And unfortunately, they all come together about 6 months before you ship, and you really better bet that it's all going to work when it gets to the end, And publishers, they always tell you, can we have a deep slice of the game? Just do a slice as deep as you can go, so we can get all the components. And it's not, it's pretty impossible, because there's AI and physics and the world and the art and the gameplay, and the systems and stuff. So since you all going to be someday in the game industry, if you're ever sitting around and a publisher says, can you have something deep and can do a slice? If you need to say yes to get the contract, say yes. But it's not going to work, It's really, it's work hard. God, I hope this doesn't screw up. Work hard. Oh God, we're going to fuck up. No, we're not. Yeah, okay. And then, we're done. And then you better hope that it works out. It's true, isn't it, Warren?
I refuse to comment.
Yes. Do we see success? Oh yeah, Microsoft loved it. It was great. It was like the first month, I think it was the third best-selling game, like up to that point. I mean, there's a Mutant Storm or whatever, it sold like 11 zillion copies, and then there was Solitaire, and then like Doom. It was like shocking, and because at first they were like, well, we don't really want to make the marketplace all retro games and stuff, and and Microsoft. They're so funny. I like Microsoft, and I know no one important is going to watch this from Microsoft, but they're so funny. The reason that the marketplace actually worked out is because they had no idea what they were doing, and because if they had a plan, they would have failed, and they just worked out. Because every time we talked with them, they'd tell us something different. It was ridiculous. It was like talking to someone with a split personality, and they just, it's shocking that it worked, and it was it really was brilliant, but it really wasn't planned as much. They'll say now, oh yeah, we planned it. No, they didn't. And yeah, they were at first they were like, oh, we don't want that, because we don't want to turn it into a dumping bin of retro crap, And so we did Doom, and it was hugely successful, And then they were like, you can do Doom too. And but the problem was the team that did it started, is working with us on the Wolfenstein. They're working with Raven on the multiplayer part of. Actually, no, they're working on the 360 version of Enemy Territory. So yes, the marketplace, very cool. Complete mistake, but it worked out great. Not planned.
Did you do it again?
Oh yeah. I mean, if we had something to do Doom 2, we would. And we started on a Quake 3 arena type marketplace game, but the developer started working on something else for us, which I can't talk about. But yes, the marketplace is very cool. We're all big fans of it at id. And one of the cool things about the developer kits, and Warren will probably agree with this, is that you get infinite credits. So they have this like pseudo credit card. You can just keep buying credits on the dev kits, and then you can play everything. It's really cool. Yes.
You talked about emphasis on cross-platform and Rage,
Mm-hmm.
and you've also got this history of open sourcing all that things.
Mm-hmm.
Why no Linux for Rage?
Oh, mainly because our Linux crowd is basically our admins, that run like like Enemy Territory. There's a server, Linux server and stuff, but there's really, unfortunately, there's just, people don't play on, they run servers on Linux, and they do, I don't, there's just there's just not enough people that actually would play on Linux. So, and it just costs, it's so expensive to do anything, it really is, even our Mac versions barely sell, and so we can't really, can't really do anything on Linux. All right. So was I interesting for 3 hours? I know my kids don't want to talk to me for 3 hours. So all right, good. I hope I was educational at least. I try to be funny. That always helps. Sometimes I'm not. But thank you all.
So as usual, I had 8 pages of questions I didn't get to. I just want to add a couple of things to what Tim said. If you're interested in the Mind Manager stuff, we use MindJet Mind Manager all the time at Junction Point as well. There's a terrific book by a guy named Tony Buzan called the Mind Map book that I strongly recommend. We also use Scrum. Look up anything by Mike Cohn on the Scrum method. It's great stuff. And one of the coolest things about tonight for me was we now have ample evidence. I hope you guys are getting the picture that every studio does everything differently from every other studio. We have now had people come in here and say that the secret sauce, the way to succeed, is not to innovate ever, but to build on experience and grow slowly. We've had people come in and say innovation is everything on the tech side or on the design side. We've had people say process is everything. We've had people say process is nothing. It's awesome. It really is true that nobody knows anything, but the one thing I do know is that if you want to get a job in the game business, I said this I think the first week, you better identify the games you love and the companies that make them and make sure that you are setting yourself up for success with them making games like that, because there is no one answer to getting in the game business and there's no one right way to do anything.